The gunshot victim wasn't supposed to survive. The nurse who saved him wasn't supposed to matter. When Elena Marlowe pulled a crime boss back from death's edge in a Chicago ER, she thought that would be the end of it. Another anonymous face in another forgotten night. She was wrong. By morning, armed men in $1,000 suits were waiting outside her apartment, and the most dangerous man in the city wanted to see her again. Not to thank her, not to threaten her, but to make her an offer that would either save her future or destroy everything she'd worked for. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches across the world. The blood wouldn't stop. Elena Marlowe's hands moved with mechanical precision, compression, assessment, pressure, the rhythm she'd learned through 6 years of emergency room chaos, student loans that would outlive her grandchildren, and shifts so brutal they'd broken nurses with twice her experience. But tonight, at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that felt like the 100th Tuesday in a row, precision wasn't enough. "We're losing him, Doctor," Reyes snapped, his voice cutting through the organized pandemonium of Trauma Bay 3. "Where's that blood?" "2 minutes out," Elena called back, her fingers already reaching for the temporary clamp, her mind 3 steps ahead, even as exhaustion dragged at her bones. Around her, Chicago Memorial's ER hummed with its usual late-night symphony. Monitors beeping, gurneys rattling, someone screaming about insurance coverage. In the waiting room, the perpetual smell of antiseptic failing to mask blood and fear. Just another shift. Just another dying patient. Just another night in a hospital that had been restructuring for 3 years, which was corporate speak for slowly bleeding out, while administrators collected bonuses and nurses collected trauma. Except this patient was different. Elena had noticed it the moment they'd wheeled him in. Noticed it in the quality of silence that had fallen over the paramedics, in the way the 2 men in expensive suits had followed the gurney right up to the ER doors before security had forced them back. She'd noticed it in the patient's eyes when they'd flickered open during assessment, cold, calculating, taking in every face, every name tag, every detail, even while bleeding out from a gunshot wound to the upper chest. Most people fighting for their lives looked afraid. This man looked like he was memorizing witnesses. "Bullets lodged near the subclavian," Dr. Reyes muttered, his hands moving inside the patient's chest cavity with careful precision. "Another 2 inches and he'd have bled out before the ambulance arrived. Lucky bastard." Elena didn't believe in luck. She believed in probability, in statistics, in the cold mathematics of trauma. And the math said this man, late 30s, obviously wealthy, based on the quality of his clothes before they'd cut them off, no wallet, no ID, no insurance information, just a hole in his chest and 2 very nervous men in suits, wasn't lucky at all. This was something else entirely. "Pressure's dropping," she called out, watching the monitors. "BP's 90/60. "Then make it not drop," Reyes shot back, but there was no real heat in it. They were both running on fumes, both doing impossible jobs with inadequate resources, both pretending this was sustainable. Elena's hands found the rhythm again. Compress, assess, adjust. The patient's skin was cool beneath her gloves, his breathing shallow but steady. She'd seen hundreds of gunshot wounds since starting at Chicago Memorial, had learned to read the story written in powder burns and entry angles, in the trajectory of violence made flesh. This one told a story of close range, of someone who'd gotten near enough to matter, who'd aimed for the kill and nearly succeeded. The kind of shooting that spoke of intimacy and betrayal. "Got it," Reyes said suddenly, his voice tight with concentration. "Bullets out. Let's close them up before—" The trauma bay doors slammed open. Elena's head snapped up, her hand still maintaining pressure on the patient's chest. 2 men entered, not the ones from earlier, but cut from the same cloth. Expensive suits, hard eyes, the kind of physical presence that suggested violence was a career skill rather than a last resort. Behind them came a third figure, older, silver-haired, moving with the calm authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed instantly. "Out," the silver-haired man said simply. Dr. Reyes stiffened. "This is a sterile environment. You can't—" "You're Dr. Marcus Reyes, employed here for 11 years, divorced, 2 daughters at Lincoln Park Academy, mortgage on a townhouse in Lakeview." The man's voice was pleasant, conversational, utterly terrifying in its specificity. "And you can finish this surgery, save my employer's life, and continue your very comfortable existence. Or you can argue about hospital protocol while he dies and discover that everything you value can disappear before sunrise. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena felt her heart hammering against her ribs, felt the weight of the patient's life literally in her hands, felt the moment crystallize into something that would divide her life into before and after. She'd known, somewhere in the back of her mind, that this patient was dangerous, but she hadn't quite grasped the scope of that danger until now. Dr. Reyes's face had gone pale. "You're threatening—" "I'm stating facts." The silver-haired man's eyes shifted to Elena, and she felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. "You're Elena Marlowe, third-year nursing student before financial circumstances forced you to postpone. Currently working double shifts to service $127,000 in student loan debt. You want to be a doctor." How did he know that? How did he know any of that? "My employer," the man continued, gesturing to the unconscious patient, "values competence above all things. You've both demonstrated competence tonight. Continue doing so, and you'll find us very generous. Fail, and you'll find us very thorough." Elena's mouth was dry, but her hands remained steady on the compression. Years of emergency medicine had taught her to function through fear, to separate the essential from the noise. Right now, the essential was keeping this man alive long enough to close the wound. Everything else could wait. "Dr. Reyes," she said quietly, her voice calmer than she felt. "We need to finish this." For a moment, she thought he might refuse, might call security, might do something heroically stupid that would get them all killed. Instead, he took a long breath and nodded. They worked in silence after that. The only sounds, the beep of monitors, and the quiet instructions between surgeon and nurse. The men in suits watched from the corners, their presence a constant pressure. Elena forced herself not to think about the threat hanging over them, forced herself to focus on sutures and clamps, and the steady rhythm of keeping someone alive. It took 47 minutes to stabilize him fully. When it was done, when the monitors showed steady vitals and the immediate crisis had passed, Elena finally stepped back. Her scrubs were soaked with blood. His blood. The blood of a man whose name she didn't know, whose life she'd just saved, whose people had just threatened everything she cared about. "Excellent work," the silver-haired man said, and it sounded like a judge pronouncing sentence. "My employer will want to thank you personally when he wakes." "That's not necessary, Doctor," Reyes said quickly. "We were just doing our jobs." "Nevertheless," the man produced 2 cards from his jacket, expensive cardstock with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. "Should you need anything at all, call this number. Consider it a token of appreciation." Elena stared at the card he'd pressed into her hand, at the phone number that probably connected to something she desperately didn't want to know about. "We can't accept. You already have." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The moment you saved his life, you became part of his story. The only question now is what role you'll play in it." Then they were gone, wheeling the patient out on the gurney with smooth efficiency, leaving Elena and Dr. Reyes standing in the blood-spattered trauma bay with nothing but 2 business cards and the growing certainty that they'd just made a catastrophic mistake. "Jesus Christ," Reyes whispered, running a shaking hand through his hair. "Do you know who that was?" Elena shook her head. "Damien Vitrano." The doctor's voice was barely audible. "They just brought in Damien fucking Vitrano, and we saved him." The name meant nothing to Elena, but the way Reyes said it, like invoking a curse, like naming the devil himself, told her everything she needed to know. "We did our jobs," she said, stripping off her bloody gloves. "We saved a patient. That's what we do." "Elena, you don't understand." "I understand that he was dying and we kept him alive." She met his eyes, saw the fear there, felt it echoing in her own chest. "Whatever else he is, whatever he's done, that's not our responsibility." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. In the moment she'd pressed her hands to Damien Vitrano's chest, in the moment she'd chosen to save him rather than let him bleed out, she'd already become responsible. The city had rules, even if they were never written down, never spoken aloud. You didn't save men like that without consequences. You didn't become part of their story without paying the price. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Elena moved through the motions, treating a college student with alcohol poisoning, splinting a broken arm, running labs, updating charts. But her mind kept circling back to those cold eyes, that pleasant voice delivering threats like weather reports, that business card burning a hole in her pocket. By the time her shift ended at 6 a.m., exhaustion had settled into her bones like lead. She changed out of her bloody scrubs, pulled on jeans and a worn sweater, and stepped out into a Chicago morning that felt exactly like every other morning, cold, gray, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out beneath its sky. The men were waiting by her car. Elena stopped short, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone before she realized how utterly pointless that would be. These weren't muggers. These weren't random threats. These were professionals, and they'd known exactly where to find her. Ms. Marlowe. The speaker was one of the men from earlier, the one with the scar along his jawline. Mr. Vetrano requests your presence. Tell Mr. Vetrano I'm off the clock, Elena said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. And tell him to make an appointment like everyone else. The man's expression didn't change. This isn't a request. Then it's kidnapping. She pulled out her phone, which I'm pretty sure is still illegal, even in whatever reality you operate in. Mr. Vetrano is recovering well thanks to your skill. He wishes to express his gratitude properly. The man gestured to a black SUV idling at the curb, windows tinted, engine purring. Please, Ms. Marlowe, we'd prefer not to make this difficult. Elena's mind raced through options, discarding each one as fast as it appeared. She could scream. There were security cameras, other hospital staff leaving their shifts, witnesses everywhere. But witnesses hadn't stopped these people from walking into a trauma bay and making threats. Witnesses wouldn't stop whatever came next. She could run, but where? To her studio apartment in a building without security? To friends who couldn't help her? To police who probably wouldn't touch anything involving Damien Vetrano with a 10-foot pole? Or she could get in the car, face whatever came next, and hope that the man she'd saved had enough gratitude to let her walk away afterward. If I'm not back at work tonight, she said carefully, people will notice. You're scheduled for 2 days off, the man replied, and Elena's blood ran cold. They'd checked her schedule. They knew her routines. They'd been watching. 1 hour, she said, hating the tremor that crept into her voice. I'll give him 1 hour, and then I need to go home. The man nodded and opened the SUV door. Elena climbed in, her heart hammering, her mind screaming that this was insane, that she should run, should fight, should do anything except voluntarily enter a vehicle with armed criminals. But her body moved anyway, choosing the devil she knew over the uncertainty of what they'd do if she refused. The door closed with a solid thunk, sealing her inside. They drove north along Lake Shore Drive, the gray waters of Lake Michigan churning beneath an equally gray sky. Elena sat in the back seat between two silent men, trying to memorize the route, trying to maintain some illusion of control even as every mile took her further from safety. The estate appeared after 40 minutes of driving, rising behind high walls and ornate gates that spoke of old money and older power. The SUV pulled through security checkpoints, past guards with earpieces and barely concealed weapons, into grounds that looked like something from a different century. Manicured gardens, even in late autumn, stone fountains, architecture that mixed old-world European grandeur with modern fortress pragmatism. This way, the scarred man said, opening her door. Elena followed because there was no other choice, her nurse's mind cataloging details automatically. Security cameras every 20 feet, sight lines that left no blind spots, men positioned at strategic points who watched her with the cool assessment of professional soldiers. This wasn't just a home. This was a command center disguised as a mansion. They led her through halls lined with art that probably cost more than her lifetime earnings, past rooms glimpsed through open doors, a library, a study, what looked like a full medical suite complete with equipment that would make Chicago Memorial's administrators weep with envy. The disparity between this world and hers was so vast it felt almost abstract. The bedroom they brought her to was on the second floor facing the lake. Damien Vetrano sat propped against pillows in a massive four-poster bed, his chest wrapped in fresh bandages, his face pale but alert. The cold intelligence she'd seen in the ER was even sharper now, focused on her with an intensity that made her want to step back. She held her ground. "Leave us," Damien said, his voice rougher than before but carrying absolute authority. The men filed out, closing the door behind them. Elena was alone with the most dangerous man in Chicago, in his bedroom, in his fortress, with no witnesses and no escape routes. Ms. Marlowe. He studied her with those calculating eyes. Thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice, Elena replied, keeping her voice level. Your people made that clear. Did they threaten you? His expression darkened. That wasn't my instruction. They didn't need to threaten explicitly. The implication was sufficient. There's something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. You're angry. I'm tired. I just worked a 12-hour shift, saved your life, and got dragged here instead of going home to sleep. So yes, I'm angry. Elena crossed her arms. What do you want, Mr. Vetrano? Damien, he corrected. And I want to thank you. You're an exceptional nurse. I was doing my job. You were doing far more than your job. He shifted slightly, wincing. I've been shot before, Miss Marlowe. I know the difference between competent medical care and the kind of skill that makes the difference between living and dying. You have that skill. Then consider yourself thanked and let me go home. I will. But first, I have a proposition for you. Elena's stomach tightened. I'm not interested in 2 weeks, Damien interrupted smoothly. Stay here as my private medical attendant for 2 weeks while I recover. In exchange, I'll pay off your student loans in full. The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. $127,000. $127,346.18, to be precise. Plus interest. His expression was unreadable. I pay my debts, Ms. Marlowe. You saved my life. That's worth considerably more than 6 figures. This is insane. Elena's mind reeled. You can't just... I have a job. Responsibilities. Chicago Memorial will grant you emergency family leave. Already arranged. He said it so casually, as if rearranging her life was no more difficult than ordering breakfast. 2 weeks. You'll have your own room, full access to the medical suite, a generous daily stipend beyond the debt payment. All you need to do is ensure I heal properly. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. You clearly have resources. You could hire any private physician in the city. I could, Damien agreed. But right now I don't trust my own shadow. Someone put a bullet in my chest, Miss Marlowe. Someone close enough to bypass my security, to know my routines, to wait for the perfect moment. Until I know who, everyone in my organization is suspect. But I'm not. Exactly. His eyes held hers. You're an outsider. You have no stake in my world, no alliances to betray, no reason to want me dead. And you've already proven your competence. That makes you the safest person to keep me alive while I recover. Elena's mind raced through the implications. 2 weeks, 14 days in this fortress with a crime boss and his army. 14 days away from her life, her routine, everything familiar, but also freedom from debt. Freedom to actually finish medical school. Freedom to stop working herself to death just to service interest payments. I could refuse, she said. You could, Damien acknowledged. I wouldn't force you. The debt would still be paid. Consider it payment for last night. But you'd be walking away from an opportunity to see how the other half lives, to understand what it means to have resources, real resources, at your disposal. And when the 2 weeks are over, you walk away. No strings, no obligations. Your debt cleared, your life your own. He paused. Though I suspect you'll find the experience educational. Elena wanted to say no. Every rational instinct screamed that this was a trap, that getting deeper into Damien Vetrano's world was a catastrophic mistake. But the weight of her debt was a physical thing, a chain she'd worn for so long she'd almost forgotten what freedom felt like. 2 weeks, 14 days, what was that against years of crushing payments? I want terms, she heard herself say, clear boundaries. Name them. I'm here as medical staff only, nothing else. I'm not your property, not your possession, not part of whatever empire you run. I treat your injuries, monitor your recovery, provide professional medical care. That's all. Agreed. I need guaranteed communication with the outside world. Phone calls, messages, proof of life. Reasonable. And if at any point I feel unsafe, threatened, or coerced, The deal is off, and I leave immediately. Fair. Damien's eyes glittered with what might have been respect. Anything else? Elena thought hard, trying to anticipate the trap she couldn't quite see. Put it in writing, contract, legal, something that proves this arrangement is consensual. My lawyer will have it ready within the hour. He extended his hand, his left hand, keeping his injured side still. Do we have a deal, Ms. Marlowe? She stared at that offered hand, at the choice it represented. Safety and poverty, or risk and freedom. The devil she knew, or the devil who was at least honest about being the devil. Elena reached out and shook his hand. 2 weeks, she said. And then I'm gone. 2 weeks, Damien agreed, his grip firm despite his injuries. Let's see if you still want to leave when they're over. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it ignited something dangerous in her chest. Not fear, but challenge. This man was used to controlling everything, to bending the world to his will. He thought 2 weeks would be enough to change her mind, to make her want to stay in his gilded cage. He was wrong. Elena Marlowe had spent 6 years fighting for every inch of progress, every small victory against a system designed to crush people like her. She'd survived nursing school, survived the ER, survived the slow-grinding poverty that tried to convince her dreams weren't worth having. She could survive Damien Vetrano. Show me to my room, she said, releasing his hand. And get me that contract. If I'm going to sell 2 weeks of my life, I want the receipt. Damien smiled then, a real smile, not the calculated expressions from before. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very interesting, Ms. Marlowe. Elena, she corrected, matching his earlier insistence. If we're going to do this, you might as well use my name. Elena, he said it slowly, testing the weight of it. Welcome to my home. Try not to save my life too many more times. It gets expensive. Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that she'd just made a deal with someone terrifying. Elena almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she followed the guard who appeared at the door, let herself be led through marble halls to a bedroom that was probably worth more than her entire apartment building, and tried to process the fact that her life had just changed completely in the space of a single shift. Outside, Lake Michigan churned against the shore, gray and cold and indifferent. Inside, Elena unpacked the few belongings they'd allowed her to collect from her apartment, hung her spare scrubs in a closet the size of her studio, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. 2 weeks. 14 days. How much could really change in 14 days? Everything, as it turned out. But Elena wouldn't know that until much later, when the clock ran out and choice became something far more complicated than a simple contract. For now, she had a patient to monitor, a debt to clear, and her own terms to enforce. For now, that would have to be enough. The contract arrived 90 minutes later, delivered by a man in an immaculate suit who introduced himself as Damien's attorney and waited with the patience of someone paid handsomely by the hour while Elena read every word twice. It was exactly what Damien had promised. No hidden clauses, no ownership language, just a straightforward exchange of medical services for debt elimination. The stipend mentioned was obscene, $5,000 per day, on top of the loan payoff. Elena's hand trembled slightly as she signed her name, knowing that even if she walked away after the first week, she'd have earned more than she made in 6 months at the hospital. Mr. Vetrano will be pleased, the attorney said, collecting the signed documents with the air of someone who'd just closed a routine business deal rather than bound a nurse to a crime boss for 2 weeks. After he left, Elena stood alone in her borrowed bedroom and tried to steady her breathing. Through the window, the lake stretched to the horizon, beautiful and pitiless. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. A knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Miss Marlowe? It was the scarred man from earlier. Mr. Vetrano's asking for you. Says his shoulder's hurting. Elena grabbed her medical bag. They'd provided one, fully stocked with everything she might need, and followed him down the hall. Professional mode, she told herself. This was just a patient, just medicine. Nothing more complicated than that. Damien was exactly where she'd left him, though his color had worsened slightly and a fine sheen of sweat covered his forehead. Elena's training kicked in immediately, sweeping aside everything else. Rate your pain, 1 to 10, she said, already moving to check his vitals. 7, maybe 8. His voice was tight. Started about 20 minutes ago. Elena's hands worked with practiced efficiency, checking his pulse, his temperature, gently probing the area around the wound. The local anesthetic from surgery is wearing off. You're also running a low-grade fever, 99.8. Not dangerous yet, but we need to watch it. So give me something for the pain. I need to examine the wound first. Make sure there's no infection starting. She met his eyes. This is going to hurt. I've been hurt before. I'm sure you have. Elena carefully began unwrapping the bandages. But that doesn't mean you need to enjoy it. Despite everything, Damien's mouth quirked. You have a sharp tongue for someone in your position. My position is medical professional. Sharp tongue comes with the territory. The bandages came away clean, which was good. Elena leaned closer, inspecting the surgical site with critical eyes. Tell me if this increases the pain. She pressed gently around the entry wound. Damien's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. The incision looks clean, Elena said, mostly to herself. No signs of infection, no unusual swelling. The fever's likely just your body's stress response to trauma, but we'll start you on prophylactic antibiotics anyway. Whatever you think is necessary. Elena glanced up sharply. That's a lot of trust for someone you met 12 hours ago. You saved my life 12 hours ago. That buys considerable trust. Damien watched her work with those unsettling, intelligent eyes. Besides, if you wanted me dead, you had your chance in the ER. Comforting thought. Elena applied fresh bandages with careful precision. I'm going to set up an IV, get some fluids and antibiotics in you. Then I want you to sleep. Actual sleep, not whatever you've been doing. I've been working. You've been shot. There's a difference. She finished securing the bandage and stepped back. The IV will take about 15 minutes to set up. Try not to conduct any criminal enterprises in the meantime. I'll do my best. Elena gathered what she needed from the medical suite. They really did have everything, equipment that most hospitals would kill for, and returned to find Damien exactly where she'd left him, though he had apparently ignored her advice because he was on his phone, speaking in low, rapid Italian. He ended the call when she entered. Problem? Your definition of rest needs work. Elena began prepping the IV line. This is going to pinch. She found the vein on the first try, sliding the needle home with the ease of thousands of repetitions. Damien barely reacted. You're good at this, he observed. I've had practice. Chicago Memorial sees more trauma in a week than most hospitals see in a month. Elena secured the line and adjusted the drip rate. We get very good at IVs, or we don't last long. Is that why you stayed at a hospital that's clearly struggling? The question caught her off guard. How did you know? I make it my business to know things. Damien shifted slightly, trying to find a comfortable position. Chicago Memorial's been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. Staff cuts, equipment shortages, entire departments running on fumes. You could work anywhere, Elena. Why stay? Elena checked the IV flow, buying herself time to think. Because the people who come to Chicago Memorial can't go anywhere else. We're in a neighborhood where most patients are uninsured or underinsured. If we close, they have nowhere to go. That's not your responsibility. No, she agreed, but it's my choice. Something shifted in Damien's expression, though Elena couldn't quite read it. You're an idealist. I'm a realist who happens to believe in doing the right thing. There's a difference. In my world, those are mutually exclusive. Then your world is smaller than you think. Elena adjusted his pillows, helping him settle back. The antibiotics might make you drowsy. Don't fight it. Your body needs rest to heal. I can't afford to rest. Not until I know who put this bullet in me. And you can't afford to die from infection because you push too hard. Elena's voice sharpened with professional authority. I don't care how powerful you are, how many men you have, how much control you think you maintain. Right now, your body is trying to survive massive trauma. If you don't let it heal, none of the rest matters. Damien studied her for a long moment. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, Elena corrected, but I'm more afraid of failing a patient. So you're going to listen to my medical advice, or this deal is off, and you can find someone else to keep you alive. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Then, unexpectedly, Damien laughed. A real laugh, rough and genuine. "I see why you wanted that contract," he said. "You have no intention of being controlled." "I told you that up front. I'm here to do a job, not to be owned." "Fair enough." His eyes were already starting to glaze slightly from the medication. "Wake me if anything important happens." "Define important." "War, betrayal, the usual." His voice was fading. "Or if my brother calls. Definitely wake me for that." Elena filed that information away. He had a brother, someone important enough to warrant interruption, and watched as the drugs and exhaustion finally pulled Damien under. His face relaxed in sleep, making him look younger, almost human rather than the calculating predator she'd seen while he was conscious. She checked his vitals one more time, made notes in the chart she was keeping, and slipped quietly from the room. The guard outside, a different one now, younger, with nervous eyes, straightened when she emerged. "He's sleeping," Elena said. "Don't disturb him unless absolutely necessary. His body needs rest to heal." "Yes, ma'am." The guard seemed uncertain whether to defer to her or maintain his own protocols. "What's your name?" Elena asked. "Marco, ma'am." "Marco, I need you to understand something. For the next 2 weeks, when it comes to Mr. Vitrano's health, my orders override everyone else's. If someone tries to wake him, to bring him business, to do anything that interferes with his recovery, you stop them. Clear?" Marco's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I don't know if I can eat." "Then find someone who can. Because if Damien Vitrano dies from complications because people kept interrupting his rest, I guarantee you'll have bigger problems than defying whoever's trying to get past that door." She said it with more confidence than she felt, weaponizing her medical authority like a shield. To her surprise, it worked. Marco nodded slowly. "I'll make sure he's not disturbed, ma'am." "Thank you." Elena softened her tone slightly. "I know this is complicated, but right now he needs healing more than he needs anything else." She left Marco looking thoughtful and made her way back to her room. The afternoon sun was slanting through the windows, painting everything gold. Elena's body ached with exhaustion. She'd been awake for nearly 24 hours now, but her mind was too wired to sleep. Instead, she explored. The estate was massive, a maze of corridors and rooms that spoke of wealth beyond her comprehension. She found the library first, 3 stories of books in a room that looked like something from a movie. Then the gym, equipped with machines that probably cost more than her car. A formal dining room that could seat 30. A conservatory filled with plants that had no business surviving Chicago winters. And everywhere, the quiet presence of security. Men who watched without seeming to watch, who tracked her movements with professional efficiency. Elena was acutely aware that she was a prisoner here, no matter how gilded the cage. She was examining a painting in one of the hallways, something dark and violent, all slashing brushstrokes and dramatic shadows, when a voice spoke behind her. "Caravaggio, The Taking of Christ." Elena turned to find the silver-haired man from the hospital, the one who'd made threats with the casual ease of someone ordering coffee. "A reproduction, obviously," he continued, moving to stand beside her. "The original is in Dublin, but a very good reproduction. Damien has always appreciated the dramatic." "And you are?" Elena kept her voice neutral. "Victor Castellano. I handle security and other matters for Mr. Vitrano." He studied the painting rather than looking at her. "I understand you've agreed to stay. For 2 weeks, then I'm gone." "Of course." Victor's tone suggested he didn't believe her. "I wanted to apologize for this morning. The approach at the hospital was more aggressive than intended. We were concerned about Mr. Vitrano's condition. You threatened Dr. Reyes's family. I stated facts. There's a difference." Victor finally looked at her, his eyes sharp. "In this world, Ms. Marlowe, information is currency. The fact that I knew those details about Dr. Reyes wasn't a threat. It was a demonstration of capability, of reach. Whether he chose to perceive it as threatening was his decision. That's a convenient rationalization. It's a reality you're now part of, at least temporarily." He gestured down the hallway. "Walk with me. There are things you should understand about your new patient." Elena hesitated, then followed. Victor set a measured pace, his hands clasped behind his back. Damian Vetrano is the third-generation head of an organization that controls significant portions of this city's infrastructure, Victor said, his tone almost conversational. Shipping, construction, waste management, entertainment, legitimate businesses, all of them, at least on paper. And the illegitimate ones? Those exist too, but they're not your concern. Victor paused at a window overlooking the grounds. What you need to understand is that Damian didn't inherit his position through blood alone. He earned it by being smarter, more strategic, and considerably more ruthless than anyone who challenged him. The shooting wasn't random violence, it was a message. From who? That's what we're trying to determine, which is why your role here is more important than you realize. Victor turned to face her fully. You're not just treating a gunshot wound, Ms. Marlowe. You're buying us time to identify and eliminate a threat. 2 weeks for you to keep him alive while we hunt. Elena's stomach twisted. I'm bait. No, you're insurance. Anyone who wants Damian dead would expect him to surround himself with his own people right now. People who could be traitors. Having an outsider, someone with no connections to our world, attending him personally. It removes variables. Makes it harder for another attempt. And if they try anyway? Then you'll discover that this estate's security is considerably more extensive than it appears. Victor's smile was cold. But I doubt it will come to that. Whoever shot Damian made their move and failed. They'll go to ground now, wait for another opportunity. Our job is to find them before that opportunity arrives. Elena processed this, trying to reconcile the civilized conversation with the underlying brutality. You're very calm about hunting someone. I'm very good at my job. As are you, apparently. Victor started walking again. Damian rarely trusts outsiders. The fact that he's trusting you with his life says something significant. It says he's desperate and out of options. It says he recognizes competence when he sees it. Don't underestimate the compliment, Ms. Marlowe, or the responsibility it carries. They'd reached the medical suite now, a fully equipped facility that would make any doctor envious. Victor gestured around the room. Everything you might need is here. If something's missing, ask and it will be procured immediately. There's a pharmacy next door, fully stocked. The staff are all cleared and loyal. You can trust them. Can I trust you? The question came out before Elena could stop it. Victor's expression didn't change. That depends on your definition of trust. Will I protect Damian's interests above all else, including yours? Yes. Will I lie to you if necessary? Absolutely. Will I let anything happen to you while you're under this roof doing your job? No. Your safety is my responsibility now, Ms. Marlowe. I take my responsibilities seriously. It was, Elena realized, probably the most honest answer she'd get from anyone in this house. I need to check on Damian soon, she said. Make sure the fever hasn't spiked. Of course. I'll leave you to your work. Victor moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Damian's younger brother, Luca, may visit in the next few days. He's been out of the country but will want to see his brother once he returns. Luca is different from Damian, more volatile. If he causes problems, come find me immediately. Noted. After Victor left, Elena stood alone in the medical suite, surrounded by equipment that represented more resources than she'd ever had access to, and tried to process the magnitude of what she'd stepped into. This wasn't just about treating a gunshot wound. This was about power plays and family dynamics and violence simmering beneath a veneer of civilization. She'd signed a contract for 2 weeks, but the complexity of the situation was already far beyond anything she'd anticipated. Her phone buzzed, the personal one they'd let her keep, not the burner Victor had provided for estate communications. A text from her roommate, Sarah. Where are you? You okay? Called the hospital and they said family emergency? Elena typed out a response carefully, aware that someone was probably monitoring her communications. All fine. Family situation came up suddenly, taking some personal time. We'll explain when I'm back. It wasn't even technically a lie, just a significant omission of the part where family situation meant indentured servitude to a crime boss. Sarah's response came quickly. Okay, but you're being weird. Call me when you can? Will do. Promise I'm safe. Another lie? Or maybe not. Elena wasn't sure anymore what safety meant in this context. She pocketed her phone and headed back to check on Damian, finding Marco still standing guard with admirable dedication. Any problems? Elena asked. 3 people tried to see him. I told them he was resting on doctor's orders. Marco looked nervous. One of them was pretty angry about it. Let me guess, someone important? Mr. Castellano's second. Said he needed to brief Mr. Vetrano on security protocols. And you stopped him anyway? Elena felt a flicker of respect for the young guard. That took courage. Marco shrugged. You said his health came first. Mr. Vetrano trusts you with his life. Figured that meant something. It does. Elena squeezed his shoulder briefly. Thank you, Marco. Seriously. She slipped into Damien's room quietly, not wanting to wake him if he was still sleeping. But his eyes opened immediately, tracking her movement with sharp awareness. How long was I out? His voice was rough with sleep. About 3 hours. How do you feel? Like I was shot. He shifted, grimacing. But better than before. The fever? Elena checked his temperature with a touch to his forehead, then followed up with a thermometer. 99.2, coming down. The antibiotics are working. Good. Damien watched as she checked the IV line, adjusted the flow rate. Victor spoke to you. It wasn't a question. He gave me the tour and the security briefing. Very thorough. He's worried I'm making a mistake, trusting you. Are you? Damien considered this. Ask me again in 2 weeks. Elena finished her examination and settled into the chair beside his bed. Your guard, Marco, turned away 3 people who wanted to see you, including Victor's second. And I'm realizing that putting a nobody nurse between you and your organization might cause problems I didn't anticipate. Let it cause problems. Damien's voice hardened. For 2 weeks, you're the only person who gets automatic access to me. Everyone else can wait. If they don't like it, they can voice their complaints after I've healed. Even your brother? His expression shifted. Victor told you about Luca. He mentioned him. Said he was different from you. That's diplomatic phrasing. Damien's jaw tightened. Luca is brilliant and impulsive and loyal to a fault. He's also the only person in this world I trust completely. So yes, if he shows up, wake me. But no one else. Clear? Clear. Elena paused, choosing her next words carefully. Can I ask you something? You can ask. I may not answer. The person who shot you, do you know who it was? Damien's eyes went distant. I have suspicions. Nothing concrete yet. But it was someone close to you. It's always someone close. That's how betrayal works. He focused on her again. Why do you want to know? Because if someone's trying to kill you, I'd like to know if I'm in danger too. You're not. The attack was targeted, specific. You're collateral at worst, and killing you would serve no purpose. Damien's voice softened slightly. You're safe here, Elena. That's not a promise I make lightly. And I'm just supposed to trust that? You're supposed to trust that keeping you safe serves my interests. As long as that's true, you have nothing to worry about. It was a brutal kind of honesty, the same stark pragmatism Victor had shown. These people didn't deal in comforting lies or false reassurances. They dealt in calculated self-interest, and somehow that was more trustworthy than any promise of protection. The IV is almost done, Elena said, retreating to safer ground. I'll switch you to oral antibiotics after this bag finishes. You need to eat something too. When's the last time you had food? Before the shooting, maybe 18 hours ago. Then I'm ordering you dinner, light, easy to digest. Soup, probably. I hate soup. I hate gunshot victims who don't follow medical advice, so we're even. Elena stood, checking her watch. I'll be back in an hour to remove the IV and bring food. Try to rest in between. Elena, Damien's voice stopped her at the door. Thank you for staying, for fighting Victor's people to let me sleep, for treating me like a patient instead of a monster. She turned back, meeting his eyes. You're welcome. But don't mistake medical professionalism for absolution. I'm keeping you alive because that's my job. What you do with that life afterward is between you and your conscience. Assuming I have one. Everyone has one. Some people just get better at ignoring it. Elena opened the door. Rest, Damien. I'll see you in an hour. She left before he could respond, her heart beating faster than it should. There was something dangerous in the way he looked at her, something that went beyond patient and caregiver. She'd seen it in the ER, seen it again today. A calculation in those cold eyes, an assessment that made her feel simultaneously valued and vulnerable. 2 weeks. She could maintain professional boundaries for 2 weeks. She could do her job, collect her payment, and walk away before whatever was building between them became something more complicated. At least, that was what she told herself as she made her way to the kitchen to arrange Damien's dinner, trying not to think about how easily she'd slipped into the rhythms of his world, how naturally she'd started giving orders to his guards, how right it had felt to fight for his recovery. The kitchen staff treated her with wary respect, preparing the light meal she requested without question. Elena carried the tray back herself, not trusting anyone else with Damien's food, a paranoia she hadn't possessed 12 hours ago, but had learned quickly in this new reality. Marco was still at his post, looking tired but determined. Elena made a mental note to ensure the guards on Damien's detail got adequate rest too. Exhausted security was dangerous security. Damien was awake when she entered, propped up against pillows and looking marginally better. The color had returned to his face, and the tension around his eyes had eased slightly. "Chicken broth, crackers, and tea," Elena announced, setting the tray on his lap. "Before you complain, remember that I control your pain medication." "That's extortion. That's healthcare." She removed the empty IV bag and began disconnecting the line. "How's the pain level now?" "Manageable. 5 maybe." "Good. We'll keep you on scheduled pain meds for another day, then switch to as needed." Elena disposed of the IV supplies and handed him a spoon. "Eat slowly. Your stomach needs to readjust." Damien obeyed, and Elena found herself watching the simple domesticity of the moment. A powerful man eating soup under her supervision, following orders from someone who had no business giving them. It was surreal and oddly intimate. "Tell me about medical school," Damien said between bites. "Why did you stop?" "Why do most people stop anything? Money." Elena settled back into her chair. "I made it through 3 years of nursing school, planned to work for a while and save up for the MD program. But my mom got sick my final year, cancer. The bills piled up faster than I could work, and by the time she died, I had 6 figures in debt and no way to take on more for medical school." "I'm sorry about your mother." The sympathy sounded genuine, which somehow made it worse. "She was tough, fought to the end. But cancer doesn't care how tough you are. No, death is the ultimate equalizer." Damien's voice carried a weight of experience. "My father died when I was 23. Heart attack, they said, but I've always suspected poison. In our world, natural death is suspicious. That's a bleak way to live. It's realistic." He finished the soup and set the bowl aside. "But it's also why moments like this matter. Simple things. Eating soup. Having someone care whether you're in pain. Being able to trust, even temporarily, that the person in the room isn't planning to kill you." Elena felt something shift in her chest, a dangerous softening. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make yourself human. It's easier if you stay a monster." Damien's laugh was low and genuine. "I am human, Elena. Monsters don't bleed. They don't feel pain. They don't lie awake at night wondering if the person they trusted most is the one who put a bullet in them." His expression sobered. "I'm just a man who made choices that led to a very specific kind of life. Some of those choices were necessary, some were strategic, and some, in retrospect, were probably wrong. That might be the most honest thing anyone said to me since I got here. Victor would say I'm being too honest, that vulnerability is weakness." Damien's eyes held hers. "But I don't think you're the type to exploit weakness. I think you're the type to stitch it up and make sure it heals properly. Now you're just flattering me to get better pain meds. Is it working?" Despite herself, Elena smiled. "Ask me in 2 weeks." She collected the empty dishes and stood to leave, but Damien's voice stopped her again. "Elena, when this is over, when your 2 weeks are up and the debt is paid, what will you do?" The question caught her off guard. "Go back to my life. Work at the hospital. Figure out how to finally afford medical school." "And if I offered you another option?" "Then I'd say you're getting ahead of yourself. We barely know each other. I know you're exceptional at your job. I know you're not intimidated by power. I know you value freedom more than comfort." Damien's gaze was intense. "That's more than I know about most people in my life. That's not knowing me. That's knowing facts about me. There's a difference. Then let me learn the difference. 2 weeks. That's the deal. Let me use that time to understand who you really are. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory, the kind of personal interest that could complicate everything. But there was something in his voice, a genuine curiosity that went beyond manipulation. I'm here to keep you alive, she said carefully. Everything else is outside the contract. Fair enough. Damien settled back against the pillows, wincing slightly. But you can't blame a man for being interested in the woman who saved his life. I can blame him for making it weird while he's still my patient. Noted. I'll wait until I'm healed before making it weird. Elena shook her head, caught between exasperation and amusement. Your trouble. You have no idea. His eyes were already starting to close, exhaustion and medication pulling him back under. But you will. 2 weeks, Elena. Let's see what happens. She left him sleeping and retreated to her room, her mind churning. This was exactly what she'd feared. The blurring of lines, the pull of a world she didn't belong to, the dangerous appeal of a man who should terrify her, but instead challenged her in ways she didn't quite understand. 2 weeks. 14 days. It had seemed simple when she'd signed the contract. Now, after just 1 day, Elena was beginning to realize that nothing about Damien Vetrano's world was simple, and the most complicated part might be the way she'd caught herself wanting to understand him, wanting to know the man beneath the reputation. That was a problem. But it was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, she would sleep in a bed worth more than her car, in a fortress guarded by armed men, having sold 2 weeks of her life to a crime boss who looked at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. Tomorrow, she would maintain boundaries. Tomorrow, she would remember why she was here. Tomorrow, she would be professional. But tonight, as Elena drifted towards sleep, she couldn't quite silence the voice asking what would happen if Damien Vetrano wasn't wrong, if 2 weeks really was enough time for everything to change. The call came at 3 in the morning on Elena's 5th day at the estate. She jerked awake to pounding on her door, her nurse's instincts firing before her brain fully engaged. Something was wrong. The urgency in those fists hitting wood spoke of crisis, not routine check-in. Elena threw on her robe and yanked open the door to find Victor, his usual composure shattered by something that looked almost like panic. We need you in the medical suite. Now. She didn't ask questions, just grabbed her bag and ran. The hallways blurred past, guards stepping aside as Victor led her at a pace just short of sprinting. Through the door, down the stairs, into the medical suite where bright lights blazed and blood. So much blood. A man was sprawled across the examination table, younger than Damien, maybe late 20s, dark hair matted with crimson. His shirt had been cut away, revealing a nightmare landscape of wounds, gunshots, knife cuts, burns that spoke of torture, methodical and cruel. Luca Vetrano, Victor said, his voice tight. Damien's brother. He was on an undercover assignment. They found him an hour ago. Elena's training kicked in, sweeping aside shock and horror. She moved to the table, fingers already finding pulse points. Thready and weak, but there. How long ago was he shot? We don't know. He's been missing for 6 days. 6 days. The wounds were a toxic mix of old and new trauma, infection already setting in around the older injuries. Elena's mind raced through triage protocols, prioritizing the immediate threats to life. I need 2 units of O-negative blood, IV setup, broad-spectrum antibiotics, and someone to assist me, now. She looked up at Victor. Where's Damien? On his way. He was in the city when we got the call. Then get him here faster. His brother's dying, and I need to know Luca's medical history, allergies, blood type confirmation, previous surgeries. Elena was already cutting away the rest of Luca's clothes, exposing the full extent of the damage. How many people know he's here? Just our inner circle. Why? Because if whoever did this finds out he survived, they might try to finish the job. Elena found the worst of the bleeding. A gunshot wound to the abdomen that had been crudely field dressed but was now seeping through the bandages. Get me surgical supplies. I need to open him up and see what we're dealing with. Victor's eyes widened. You're not a surgeon. I'm all he's got right now, so either help me save him or get out of my way. For a heartbeat, Victor hesitated. Then he moved, barking orders to the staff who'd gathered in the doorway. Within minutes, Elena had what she needed. Not a full surgical theater, but close enough. She scrubbed in with shaking hands, trying not to think about the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. This wasn't a controlled hospital environment with attending physicians and backup teams. This was just her, a dying man, and skills she'd learned through observation more than practice. "Talk to me," Elena said to Luca, even though he was unconscious. "Tell me where it hurts the worst." Her hands found the abdominal wound, probing gently. The bullet had entered just below the rib cage, possibly perforating the liver or intestines. Internal bleeding was a certainty. The question was how much damage had been done in the 6 days since. Elena made the first incision, extending the existing wound to give herself better access. Blood welled up immediately, and she worked to suction it away while searching for the source. "Liver laceration," she muttered. "Possibly nicked the hepatic artery. I need more light here." Someone adjusted the overhead lamp. Elena worked with a focus that shut out everything else. The guards watching, the pressure of Victor's gaze, the knowledge that Damien's brother's life was literally in her hands. There was only the wound, the blood, the desperate race against time. She found the arterial bleed and clamped it, buying herself breathing room. Then she began the painstaking work of assessing the damage, repairing what she could, cleaning out infection and dead tissue. It took 2 hours. When Elena finally stepped back, her hands were cramping and her scrubs were soaked with blood, but Luca Vitrano's vitals had stabilized. The monitor showed a steady heartbeat, blood pressure climbing back toward normal, oxygen saturation improving. "He's stable," she said, her voice hoarse. "The next 24 hours are critical. If infection doesn't set in, if there's no delayed bleeding, he has a chance." "You saved his life." Victor's voice held something like awe. "I bought him time. That's not the same thing." Elena looked down at Luca's unconscious face, at the evidence of torture written across his skin. "What happened to him?" "We're still piecing it together. He was investigating a trafficking operation, went deep undercover. Someone must have made him. Then they did this." Then they did worse than this. What you're seeing is just the physical damage." Victor's expression was grim. "Luca's strong, but I don't know if he'll be the same person when he wakes up." Elena began cleaning the surgical site, applying fresh bandages. "Has anyone contacted his family? Besides Damien?" "Luca doesn't have family besides Damien. Their mother died when Luca was 12. Different mothers, but they're close. Closer than most blood brothers." The door burst open and Damien strode in, still moving stiffly from his own injury but radiating a fury that made the air feel electric. His eyes found Luca on the table, took in the bandages and IV lines and monitoring equipment, then snapped to Elena. "How bad?" "Bad," Elena said honestly. "Multiple gunshot wounds, evidence of sustained torture, severe blood loss, and infection. But he's alive, and if we can keep him that way for the next day, his chances improve significantly." Damien moved to his brother's side, his hand hovering over Luca's shoulder as if afraid to touch him. "Will he wake up?" "Eventually. I've kept him sedated for now. His body needs rest to heal, and the pain would be unbearable otherwise." Elena watched Damien's face, seeing something crack beneath the usual cold control. "I'm sorry. I did everything I could." "You saved him." Damien's voice was rough. "Victor said you operated. That you're not a surgeon, Elena." "No, but I was all he had." She met his eyes. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more." "You did everything." Damien's hand finally settled on Luca's shoulder, gentle, despite the violence coiled in every line of his body. "Who did this?" "We're working on it," Victor said. "We found him in a warehouse on the south side. Whoever held him cleared out fast, left him to die." "Then they made a mistake." Damien's voice went flat, emotionless, which was somehow more terrifying than rage. "Because now we know they're afraid. And when I find out who's responsible, I'm going to make them understand what real fear looks like." Elena had heard threats before, had treated enough victims of violence to understand its many faces. But the promise in Damien's voice was different, cold, calculated, absolute. This wasn't anger. This was certainty. "He needs round-the-clock monitoring," she said, pulling the conversation back to medicine, because that was the only solid ground she had left. I can take the first shift, but I'll need someone to spell me. Someone medically trained. I'll bring in a nurse from our private physician's office, Victor said. Someone cleared and trustworthy. No, Damien's voice cut like a blade. Elena handles it. No one else gets close to him until we know who we can trust. Damien, I can't stay awake for 24 hours straight, Elena protested. I'm already running on fumes from your recovery. If you want me to keep him alive, I need backup. Then I'll watch him while you sleep. Damien pulled up a chair, settling in beside the bed with the air of someone who had no intention of moving. You tell me what to watch for, what means danger, and I'll wake you if anything changes. It was insane. It was putting a recovering gunshot victim on nursing duty. But Elena recognized the immovability in Damien's expression, the brother bond that superseded logic. Fine, she said, too tired to argue. But you're still recovering yourself. If you feel dizzy, if your wound starts bleeding, if anything feels wrong, you wake me immediately. Deal? Deal. Elena spent the next 30 minutes teaching Damien how to read the monitors, what vital signs to watch, how to check Luca's breathing and responsiveness. He absorbed it all with the same sharp focus he brought to everything, asking precise questions and taking mental notes. The sedation will keep him under for at least 6 hours, Elena explained. After that, we'll need to assess his pain levels and adjust accordingly. The infection is my biggest concern. We're hitting it hard with antibiotics, but given how long he was untreated, there could be complications. What kind of complications? Sepsis, organ failure, delayed bleeding if we miss something. Elena rubbed her eyes, exhaustion crashing over her now that the adrenaline was fading. I did my best, Damien, but this was beyond anything I've ever attempted. If he dies, he won't. Damien's voice was absolute. You saved him once already. You'll do it again if necessary. I'm not a miracle worker. No, you're something better. You're competent, dedicated, and you don't give up. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Elena saw gratitude mixed with something deeper. Go rest. I'll keep watch. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to stay and monitor Luca herself, wanted to maintain the professional boundaries that were eroding with every passing hour. But her body was shutting down, and she knew that trying to function on no sleep would make her dangerous rather than helpful. 6 hours, she said. Then I'm back whether you've slept or not. 6 hours, Damien agreed. Elena made it to her room on autopilot, stripped off her bloody scrubs, and collapsed into bed without bothering to shower. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of Damien sitting vigil beside his brother, two men bound by blood and loyalty and a kind of love that existed despite the violence that defined their world. She woke 5 hours later to her phone buzzing with a text from Damien. Vitals stable. No changes. Sleep another hour if you need it. Elena sat up, checking the time. 4 a.m. She'd managed 5 hours of broken sleep punctuated by nightmares of Luca dying on the table, of her hands failing to stop the bleeding, of Damien's face when she had to tell him she'd lost his brother. She texted back, "On my way down." After a quick shower and fresh scrubs, Elena returned to the medical suite to find Damien exactly where she'd left him, still watching the monitors with unwavering attention. He looked exhausted, his own wound clearly bothering him based on the tension in his shoulders. "Report," Elena said, falling into professional mode. Heart rate's been steady between 65 and 70, blood pressure holding at 110/70, breathing regular, no signs of distress. Damien rattled off the numbers like he'd been doing this for years. He moved twice. Small movements, nothing that seemed like consciousness. Good, that's all normal. Elena checked Luca's bandages, relieved to find no signs of fresh bleeding. How are you feeling? I'm fine. You're lying. She pressed fingers to his forehead, feeling the low-grade fever. You're warm. When did you last take your antibiotics? I don't remember. Damien, Elena's voice sharpened with professional authority. You can't take care of him if you relapse. Go to your room, take your medication, and sleep for at least 4 hours. I'm not leaving him. Yes, you are. Because if you collapse from exhaustion or infection, I have to choose between treating you or treating him, and right now he's in worse shape. Elena softened her tone. Please, trust me to keep him safe while you rest. Damien looked between her and Luca, torn between protective instinct and reason. Finally he stood, moving stiffly. 4 hours. Then I'm back. 4 hours, Elena agreed. Then, after he left, she settled into the vigil, monitoring Luca's vitals and adjusting his medication drip. The younger Vetrano's face was peaceful in unconsciousness, the pain and trauma temporarily held at bay by sedation. Elena found herself wondering what he was like when he was awake, if he shared Damien's cold calculation, or if he was different, softer somehow, despite the violence of his world. The hours passed slowly. Elena dozed in her chair, waking at every beep of the monitors, every small change in Luca's breathing. Dawn crept through the windows, painting the medical suite in shades of gray and gold. At 7 a.m., Luca's eyes opened. Elena was at his side immediately, keeping her voice calm and gentle. "Luca, can you hear me?" His eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated from the drugs. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. "Don't talk yet. You're safe. You're at Damien's estate." Elena held up her hand. "If you can see me clearly, blink twice." 2 deliberate blinks. "Good. You were badly injured, but you're stable now. I'm Elena. I've been treating you. Do you understand?" Another 2 blinks. Then his lips moved, forming a single word. "Damien? He's here. He's safe. I'll get him for you in a moment." Elena checked his vitals, noting the spike in heart rate, expected given the circumstances. "First, I need to know. Are you in pain? Blink once for yes, twice for no." 1 blink. "Scale of 1 to 10, how bad?" Elena held up fingers. "Blink when I reach the right number." She counted up. Luca blinked at 7. Elena adjusted his pain medication, watching his face relax slightly as the drugs took effect. "Better?" 2 blinks. "I'm going to get Damien now. Don't try to move. You have multiple injuries that need to stay still to heal properly." She found Damien in the hallway outside, standing against the wall like he'd been waiting there the entire time, instead of resting like she'd ordered. "He's awake," Elena said. Damien was moving before she finished the sentence, brushing past her into the medical suite. Elena followed, watching as the cold, calculating crime boss transformed into something more human, a brother, terrified and relieved in equal measure. "Luca." Damien's voice cracked on the name. Luca's eyes found his brother, and Elena saw tears leak from their corners. His lips moved again, shaping words that had no sound. "Don't talk," Damien said, taking his brother's hand carefully, avoiding the IV line. "You're safe now. You're home." Luca's fingers tightened on Damien's hand, and the raw emotion between them made Elena feel like an intruder. She started to slip out, to give them privacy, but Damien's voice stopped her. "Stay, please. He should know who saved him." Elena moved to the other side of the bed. Luca's eyes tracked her, questioning. "This is Elena," Damien said. "She pulled you back from the edge. You were—" His voice roughened. "You were gone, Luca, and she brought you back." Luca's gaze held Elena's, and she saw intelligence there despite the drugs, a sharp mind assessing and cataloging even through pain and trauma. Then, slowly, he lifted his free hand toward her. Elena took it gently, careful of the bruises and cuts marking his skin. "You're going to be okay," she said, willing it to be true. "It'll take time, but you'll heal." Luca's mouth moved, and this time sound came out, barely a whisper. "Who?" "We don't know yet," Damien said, his voice going hard. "But we will. And when we do—" "No." Elena's voice was sharp. "Not in front of him. Not while he's like this." Damien's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Later. We'll talk about it later." Luca's eyes were already starting to close again, the effort of consciousness too much. Elena checked his vitals one more time, satisfied with what she saw. "He needs to rest," she said quietly. "The sedation will pull him back under soon. That's normal. His body needs time to heal." "Will he be okay?" Damien asked, and Elena heard the fear beneath the question. "Really?" "The next few days will tell us, but he's strong, and he's fighting. Those are good signs." Elena looked at the 2 brothers, at the bond between them that transcended the violence of their world. He has something to fight for. That matters. Luca's eyes opened one more time, finding Damien's face. "Don't!" The word was barely audible. "Don't do something stupid." Too late. I do stupid things all the time, Damien said, forcing lightness into his voice. Like trusting you to come back from undercover assignments in one piece. The ghost of a smile touched Luca's lips before unconsciousness claimed him again. Damien stood there for a long moment, still holding his brother's hand, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Elena. What you did tonight, operating on him without training, without backup, that was beyond anything I could have asked for. I didn't have a choice. He would have died before we could get him to a hospital. You always have a choice. You chose to try, even knowing you might fail, even knowing what it would mean if you did. Damien's voice dropped. I owe you more than money now, Elena. I owe you everything. Elena felt something shift in the air between them, a weight of debt and gratitude that went beyond their original contract. You don't owe me anything. I was doing my job. Your job was to monitor my recovery from a gunshot wound. Emergency surgery on a torture victim wasn't in the contract. The contract said I'd provide medical care. That's what I did. Elena. Damien moved closer, and she could see exhaustion and worry and something else in his eyes. You could have let him die. Told me he was too far gone, that there was nothing you could do. No one would have blamed you. Instead, you fought for a man you'd never met because he's my brother, because it was the right thing to do. Of course it was the right thing to do. He's a person, Damien. He was dying. What else would I have done? Most people in your position? They would have calculated the risk, realized that attempting surgery you're not trained for on a patient this critical could end your medical career if he died. They would have protected themselves first. Damien's gaze held hers. You protected him instead. You chose his life over your own safety. Elena hadn't thought of it that way, had been too focused on the immediate crisis to consider the larger implications. But he was right. If Luca had died on that table, under her hands, there would have been questions, maybe investigations, certainly the end of any hope she had of finishing medical school. She'd risked everything to save him, and she'd do it again without hesitation. I'm a nurse, she said simply. That's what we do. We fight for our patients even when the odds are impossible. No, Damien said softly. That's what you do. That's who you are. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face before dropping back to his side. And it's making it very difficult to maintain professional boundaries. Elena's breath caught. Damien, I know the deal. 2 weeks, medical care only, no complications. His voice was rough. But watching you fight for Luca, seeing you refuse to give up even when any rational person would have. Elena, you're extraordinary. And I don't know how to be around someone extraordinary without wanting more. You're my patient. He's my patient. Nothing can happen while that's true. I know. I needed you to know that it's not just gratitude. It's not just because you saved my life or Luca's life. It's you. The way you stand up to Victor, the way you ordered my guards around to protect my rest, the way you looked at Luca and saw a person worth saving, not just my brother or a crime family heir. Damien took a careful breath. I see you, Elena. Really see you. And what I see makes me want to be better than I am. The words landed like physical blows, each one chipping away at the walls Elena had built around herself. This was dangerous territory, the kind of emotional intimacy that could destroy the boundaries she'd worked so hard to maintain. I can't do this, she said, stepping back. I can't be the person who redeems you or changes you or whatever you think you need. I'm just trying to survive, Damien. To get through these 2 weeks, clear my debt, and go back to my life. And if I don't want you to go back, that's not your choice to make. I know. He looked at Luca, unconscious and fragile on the medical table. But it doesn't stop me from wishing it was. Elena felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm sorry. You're right. This isn't fair to you. Damien moved back to his brother's side, putting distance between them. Focus on Luca. That's what matters now. Everything else can wait. But they both knew nothing was waiting. Something was building between them, inevitable as gravity, dangerous as the world Damien inhabited. And Elena didn't know if she had the strength to fight it for another 9 days. She checked Luca's vitals again, adjusted his medication, made notes in his chart, all the familiar rhythms of nursing that should have grounded her but instead felt like going through motions while her world shifted beneath her feet. "I need to check your wound," she said to Damien, retreating to professional territory. "You've been moving too much, stressing the injury." Damien submitted to her examination without protest, sitting still while she unwrapped his bandages and inspected the surgical site. It looked good, healing cleanly, but he definitely strained it during the crisis with Luca. "You're lucky you didn't tear the stitches," Elena said, applying fresh bandages. "No more heroic vigils. You need rest as much as he does." "I'll rest when he's out of danger." "Damien, Elena, he's my brother. The only family I have left. I can't—" His voice cracked. "I can't lose him." The raw vulnerability in those words shattered something in Elena's chest. She'd seen Damien as the cold crime boss, the calculating manipulator, the dangerous man who could buy and sell lives. But underneath all that was just a person terrified of losing someone he loved. Without thinking, Elena put her hand on his shoulder. "You won't lose him, I promise." Damien looked up at her, and the gratitude in his eyes was almost painful to witness. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I don't." Elena squeezed gently. "He's through the worst of it. If infection doesn't set in the next 48 hours, he'll make it. I'll make sure of it." "Why? Why do you care so much about saving us?" The question caught Elena off guard. She thought about it, about the real answer beneath the professional platitudes. "Because everyone deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment," she said finally. "Everyone deserves someone who'll fight for them when they can't fight for themselves. That's what medicine is supposed to be, not judgment, just healing. Luca might be part of your world, might have done things I couldn't forgive if I knew about them. But right now he's just a person who's hurt and needs help. That's all that matters." Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, carefully, and pulled Elena into a gentle hug, cautious of both their injuries, but firm enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her cheek. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, "for seeing us as human, for not giving up, for being exactly who you are." Elena let herself lean into the embrace for just a moment, allowed herself this one breach of professional distance. Then she stepped back, rebuilding her walls. "Get some rest," she said, her voice not quite steady. "That's an order from your medical provider." "Yes, ma'am." Damien managed a tired smile. "Wake me if anything changes with Luca." "I will." After he left, Elena settled back into her vigil, monitoring the two Vetrano brothers from opposite sides of a divide that felt increasingly unstable. Damien recovering in his room upstairs, Luca fighting for his life in the medical suite. And Elena caught between them, trying to heal bodies while her own defenses crumbled. 9 days left on her contract. 9 days until she could walk away. Elena looked at Luca's unconscious face, at the evidence of torture and survival written on his skin, and wondered if 9 days would be enough time to save him. Wondered if any amount of time would be enough to save herself from caring too much about the men she was supposed to keep at professional distance. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm, marking heartbeats and breaths, measuring the thin line between life and death. Elena closed her eyes and made a silent promise to the unconscious man on the table. She would keep him alive. Whatever it took, however impossible the odds, she would fight for Luca Vetrano the same way she fought for every patient who'd ever needed her. Because that was who she was. A healer, a fighter, someone who refused to give up even when giving up would be easier. Even when giving up might be safer. Even when staying meant risking everything she'd worked so hard to protect. Luca's fever spiked on the second day. Elena had been expecting it. Infection was almost inevitable given the conditions he'd endured. But watching his temperature climb to 103 still sent her heart racing. She worked through the crisis with methodical precision, adjusting antibiotics, applying ice packs, monitoring his vitals minute by minute, while Damien paced the medical suite like a caged animal. "He's not responding," Damien said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "The fever's still climbing. It takes time for the new antibiotic to work. We switched to a stronger combination an hour ago." Elena wiped Luca's forehead with a cool cloth, checking his pupils. "His body's fighting. That's what the fever is. His immune system going to war. What if it's not enough? Then we adjust again. But right now, we wait and monitor." Elena looked up at Damien, seeing the fear beneath his controlled exterior. I know waiting is hard, but sometimes it's all we can do. Damien stopped pacing and dropped into the chair beside Luca's bed, his hands clenched into fists. When we were kids, I used to tell him I'd always protect him, that nothing would ever hurt him while I was alive. His voice was rough. I broke that promise. You didn't do this to him. I sent him on that assignment. I knew it was dangerous, but I needed someone I could trust absolutely, and Luca, he never says no to me, never questions. Just trust that I know what I'm doing. Damien looked at his brother's unconscious face. He trusted me, and I nearly got him killed. Elena set down the cloth and moved to stand beside Damien's chair. He's an adult who made his own choice. You didn't force him. Didn't I? I'm the head of this family. When I ask for something, it's not really a request. It's an order wrapped in the illusion of choice. Then you're not giving him enough credit. From what I've seen, Luca's not someone who follows orders blindly. Elena thought of the intelligence she'd seen in Luca's eyes during his brief moment of consciousness, the way he'd warned Damien not to do anything stupid. He chose to go because he believed in whatever you were trying to accomplish. That was his decision, not yours. Damien was quiet for a long moment. You have a way of cutting through my guilt to uncomfortable truths. It's a gift. Elena checked Luca's temperature again. 102.8, starting to come down, finally. The fever's breaking. The antibiotics are working. The relief that washed over Damien's face was profound. He reached out and took Luca's hand, his grip gentle despite the emotion behind it. Fight, little brother. Come back. Over the next 6 hours, they watched Luca's fever gradually decline, his vitals stabilizing into safer ranges. Elena dozed in her chair, waking every 20 minutes to check on him, while Damien maintained his vigil with stubborn determination. At dawn on the third day, Luca's eyes opened again, clearer this time, more focused. Hey, Damien said softly, leaning forward. Welcome back. Luca's gaze moved between his brother and Elena, then down to the bandages covering his torso. When he spoke, his voice was stronger than before, though still rough. How bad? Bad enough, Damien said, but you're going to make it. The mission doesn't matter right now, just focus on healing. But Luca shook his head slightly, wincing at the movement. It does matter. I found something, before they made me. His eyes found Elena. Can she be trusted? With my life, Damien said without hesitation. She saved yours. Twice. Luca studied Elena for a long moment, then nodded. The trafficking ring, it goes higher than we thought. Politicians, judges, people we thought were clean. He paused, struggling for breath. I had names, documentation. They tortured me for it. Did you give them anything? Damien's voice was carefully neutral. I gave them enough to buy time, misdirection, partial truths. A ghost of a smile crossed Luca's face. But the real evidence is still secure, hidden where they'll never find it. Where? Sophia has it. I sent her everything before I went dark. Damien's expression tightened. Your ex-girlfriend? Luca, she's not part of this world. Exactly. They'd never think to look at her. I encrypted everything, gave her instructions to only open the files if she didn't hear from me for 7 days. Luca's breathing was labored. What day is it? Day 6, since you went missing. Then we have 1 day to get to her before she opens those files and potentially gets herself killed. Luca tried to sit up, groaning with pain. You need to stay in that bed, Elena said firmly, pressing him back down. Your brother can handle retrieving the files. You're in no condition to do anything but heal. Luca looked like he wanted to argue, but another wave of pain stopped him. Sophia doesn't know about my work, about any of this. She thinks I'm an import-export. Then we'll keep it that way, Damien said. I'll send someone to retrieve the package. She never needs to know what was in it. No. Luca's hand shot out, grabbing Damien's wrist with surprising strength. She'll only give it to me. I made her promise. Biometric verification, voice confirmation, the works. I was paranoid about security. For good reason, apparently. Damien looked at Elena. How mobile is he? He's not. Moving him now could tear open internal injuries, restart bleeding, kill him. Elena's voice was absolute. I don't care how important those files are. He's not leaving this room. Then I'll bring Sophia here, Damien said. No, Luca's voice cracked with urgency. You can't bring her into this, into our world. She's innocent, Damien. She deserves better than what? Being dragged into a situation where she's holding evidence that could get her killed? Damien's tone was sharp. She's already in it, Luca. The moment you sent her those files, you made her part of this. Now we either bring her somewhere safe or leave her exposed. Luca's face twisted with guilt and anguish. I didn't have a choice. I was running out of time and I couldn't risk the evidence disappearing if they… He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Elena felt a pang of sympathy for both brothers. Luca had made an impossible choice under extreme pressure, and now a civilian was caught in the crossfire. Bring her here, Elena said quietly. Both men looked at her in surprise. If she's in danger, this is the safest place for her. But let me talk to her first. Woman to woman, she's going to be terrified, and having armed men descend on her won't help. Damien considered this, then nodded. Victor will arrange it, but I want full security. No obvious security, Elena interrupted. You'll scare her worse. Make it look like a normal request to visit Luca. Tell her he was in an accident, that he's asking for her. Keep it as close to normal as possible until we have her somewhere safe. You're getting good at this, Damien observed, something like admiration in his voice. I work in an ER. We de-escalate terrified people every day. Elena checked Luca's vitals, noting his elevated heart rate. Now both of you calm down before you spike his blood pressure any higher. Luca managed a weak smile. I like her. She's bossy. She's keeping you alive, Damien said, which means you follow her orders. No arguments. Since when do I argue with you? Since always. You just do it more politely than everyone else. The brotherly banter eased some of the tension in the room. Elena adjusted Luca's pain medication, watching his features relax as the drugs took effect. Sleep, she told him. We'll handle Sophia. You focus on healing. Elena, Luca's voice was already fading. Thank you. For everything. You're welcome. Now rest. She waited until Luca's breathing evened out into sleep before turning to Damien. When you bring Sophia here, I need you to understand something. She's going to be frightened, confused, possibly angry. Let me handle the initial conversation. Fine, but Victor's people will need to brief her on security protocols, after I establish trust, not before. Elena held his gaze. I mean it, Damien. If you want her cooperation, you need to let me do this my way. I'm trusting you with a lot. You trusted me with your life, with Luca's life. This is just an extension of that trust. Elena paused. Unless there's something about Sophia I should know, something that makes this more complicated? Damien's expression grew thoughtful. Luca loved her, really loved her. They were together for 2 years before he broke it off 8 months ago, told her he wasn't ready for commitment, that he needed to focus on work. But really, he was protecting her. Really, he was going deep undercover and didn't want her caught in the fallout if things went wrong. Damien looked at his sleeping brother. He's been miserable without her, tried to act like he wasn't, but I know my brother. Elena felt her heart twist. Then she probably still cares about him too. We can use that, not manipulatively, just honestly. She'll want to help him if she understands he's hurt. And when she asks how he got hurt, what he was really doing. We tell her as much truth as we can without putting her in more danger. Elena thought it through. Car accident, maybe. Something that explains the injuries without revealing the whole truth. She's going to know we're lying. Probably, but she'll also know Luca needs her, and that might be enough. Elena checked her watch. How long to bring her here? She lives in the city. 2 hours, maybe 3 if she's at work. Damien pulled out his phone. I'll have Victor make the arrangements. While Damien made calls, Elena stayed with Luca, monitoring his vitals and thinking about the woman who was about to have her life turned upside down. Sophia had no idea that the man she'd loved, maybe still loved, was part of a criminal empire, had been tortured for information, was lying in a private medical suite fighting for his life. The weight of secrets in this world was crushing. Everyone protecting everyone else, everyone lying to the people they cared about, all in the name of safety. Elena wondered if any of them ever got to just be honest, to show their real selves without calculation or consequence. Damien finished his calls and returned to Luca's bedside. Victor's handling it. He'll tell her Luca was in a serious accident and is asking to see her. She should be here in about 3 hours. Good. That gives me time to prepare. Elena made notes in Luca's chart, documenting his fever crisis and recovery. You should rest too. You've been up for almost 36 hours. I'm fine. You're running on adrenaline and stubbornness. Neither is sustainable. Elena looked up at him. I can't have both Vetrano brothers as patients. One of you needs to stay healthy. I'll rest when Sophia's here and the files are secure. Elena recognized the immovable tone. Then at least eat something. You haven't had food since yesterday. I'm not hungry. I don't care. You need fuel or your own recovery will backslide. She pointed toward the door. Go. Eat. I'll watch Luca. Damien opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. You're very authoritative when you want to be. I'm a nurse. Authoritative is part of the job description. Elena softened her tone. Please, Damien, take care of yourself. Luca needs you functional, not collapsed. Fine, but call me if anything changes. I will. After he left, Elena settled back into her vigil, the medical suite quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. She found herself thinking about the conversation ahead, about Sophia and the complicated truths she'd have to navigate. The truth was a luxury in this world. Everyone dealt in partial revelations, strategic omissions, necessary lies. Elena had been doing it herself, telling Sarah she was fine, telling her supervisor the family emergency story, maintaining the fiction that her 2 weeks away was anything close to normal. But lying wore on you. It created distance between who you were and who you pretended to be. Elena could feel that distance growing inside her, could feel herself becoming someone who could operate on a torture victim at 3 a.m. and then calmly plan how to manipulate his ex-girlfriend into cooperation. When had she become this person? When had the lines gotten so blurred? Luca stirred, his eyes flickering open briefly. Elena? I'm here. Do you need anything? Just wanted to make sure you were real, that I'm really safe. His voice was drowsy with medication. I kept thinking I was hallucinating, that the rescue wasn't real. Elena moved closer, letting him see her clearly. You're safe. You're healing. This is real. Thank you. His eyes drifted closed again. For fighting for me. Damien told me what you did. The surgery. You risked everything. You're welcome. Now sleep. One more thing. Luca's voice was fading. Don't let Damien mess this up with you. He's terrible at relationships, but he cares. Really cares. I can tell. Elena's breath caught. Luca? But he was already asleep again, his breathing deep and even. She sat back, her mind churning. Even in his wounded state, even fighting through pain and medication, Luca had seen what was building between her and Damien. Had seen it and apparently approved, which somehow made it more real and more terrifying. 3 hours passed in quiet routine. Elena monitored Luca's vitals, changed his bandages, adjusted his IV. She tried not to think about Damien's confession, about the way he'd looked at her when he said she made him want to be better. Tried not to think about the fact that she had only 5 days left on her contract. 5 days until she was supposed to walk away from this world forever. The intercom buzzed. Victor's voice crackled through. Miss Marlowe, our guest has arrived. She's being brought to the main sitting room. I'll be right there. Elena checked Luca one more time, ensuring he was stable, then made her way upstairs. Sophia was standing in the middle of an ornate sitting room, looking utterly out of place among the expensive furniture and artwork. She was petite, dark-haired, beautiful in an understated way, and she was terrified, though she was trying hard to hide it. Hi, Elena said gently, staying near the doorway to avoid seeming threatening. I'm Elena. I've been taking care of Luca. Sophia's eyes were wide. They said he was in an accident, that he's hurt. I don't understand what's happening. Who are you people? I'm a nurse. Luca was badly injured and I've been treating him. Elena kept her voice calm, professional. He's stable now, but he's been asking for you. Where is he? I want to see him. You will, but first I need to explain some things so you're prepared. Elena gestured to a chair. Please sit. I know this is overwhelming. Sophia remained standing, her arms crossed defensively. The men who brought me here, they were very polite, but also very clear that I didn't have a choice about coming. That's not normal for a hospital visit. You're right. This isn't a normal situation. Elena chose her words carefully. Luca was involved in something dangerous. He was hurt badly. The people who hurt him might still be looking for him, which is why he's here instead of a hospital. It's safer. Who hurt him? What was he involved in? Sophia's voice shook. He told me he worked in import-export. Was that a lie? That's something Luca should tell you himself if he chooses to. I'm just here to make sure you understand that he's safe now. He's healing, and he needs your help with something. What kind of help? Elena met her eyes. He sent you a package. Before he was hurt. He needs it back. Understanding dawned on Sophia's face, followed by fear. The encrypted files. He sent them to me 2 weeks ago, told me not to open them unless I didn't hear from him for 7 days. I thought... She stopped, pressing a hand to her mouth. I thought he was being paranoid, but he was protecting me, wasn't he? Yes. And now we need to protect you by getting those files secured. Elena moved closer, keeping her body language open and non-threatening. Sophia, I know you're scared. I know this doesn't make sense. But Luca cares about you enough that even while he was being tortured, he made sure that evidence stayed safe. Made sure you stayed safe. Now I'm asking you to trust me long enough to see him, give him the files, and let us make sure no one comes looking for you. Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. Tortured? What did they do to him? Nothing I'm going to describe in detail, but he survived and he's going to recover. He's strong. Elena pulled out a tissue and offered it. Do you want to see him? Sophia nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, please. Elena led her downstairs, giving Victor a subtle signal to stay back, to give them space. Sophia's breathing quickened as they approached the medical suite, fear and love warring on her face. Luca was awake when they entered, his eyes finding Sophia immediately. The raw emotion that crossed his face, relief and longing and regret all tangled together, made Elena feel like an intruder again. Sophia. His voice cracked on her name. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sophia rushed to his bedside, her hands hovering over him as if afraid to touch, afraid she'd hurt him. What happened to you? Luca, what's going on? I can't tell you everything. It's safer if you don't know. Luca's hand found hers, gripping tight. But I need those files, the ones I sent you. I have them. I brought the hard drive. She pulled a small encrypted drive from her purse. But Luca, I don't care about files. I care about you. You disappeared for 8 months, no contact, and now you look... I know. He pulled her closer, wincing at the movement. I know what I look like. I know what I put you through. But I need you to understand that everything I did, including breaking up with you, was to keep you safe. Safe from what? Sophia's voice rose. From whoever did this to you, from your real job that apparently isn't import-export? She looked around the medical suite, taking in the expensive equipment. This isn't a hospital. These aren't normal circumstances. What are you really involved in? Luca looked past her to Elena, his expression pleading. Elena understood. He wanted her to intervene, to help, but this was a conversation he needed to have himself. I'll give you some privacy, Elena said quietly. Sophia, there's a button on that monitor. If anything looks wrong, press it and I'll come immediately. She slipped out, finding Damien waiting in the hallway. How is she? He asked. Scared, angry, in love with him still. Elena leaned against the wall, exhausted. He's going to tell her the truth. That's dangerous. So is lying to someone who's already figured out most of it anyway. Elena looked at Damien. She deserves honesty from him, even if it's just this once. And if she can't handle it, if she runs, then you let her go. Erase this address from her memory somehow and make sure she stays safe. Elena's voice was firm. But you don't threaten her. You don't manipulate her. You give her the choice you didn't give me. Damien's eyes narrowed. I gave you a choice. Contract, clear terms, mutual agreement. You gave me a choice between financial ruin and indentured servitude. That's not the same as real choice. Elena held his gaze. I'm not saying I regret it. I'm saying Sophia deserves better. She didn't sign up for any of this. Neither did you. I chose to save your life in that ER. Everything that came after was consequence, but Sophia was just living her normal life when Luca dragged her into this. Elena pushed off the wall. So we owe her honesty, safety, and the freedom to walk away if that's what she chooses. Agreed? Damien was quiet for a long moment. You're making me into someone better than I am. No, I'm just expecting you to be the person you already are when you're not trying to be the cold crime boss. Elena softened. I've seen you with Luca. I know you understand love and loyalty and protection. Extend that to Sophia. For your brother's sake, if not for her own. Fine. We do it your way. He stepped closer. But if this goes wrong, if she becomes a liability, she won't. Trust me. I do. That's the problem. Damien's voice dropped. I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in years. And in 5 days, you're going to walk away, and I'm going to have to figure out how to go back to being the person I was before I met you. Elena's chest tightened. Damien, we can't. I know the rules. I'm just telling you that they're getting harder to follow. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. You've changed things, Elena. Changed me. And I don't know how to undo that. Maybe you don't have to. The words came out before Elena could stop them. Maybe change is good. Not in my world. In my world, change gets people killed. Then maybe your world needs to change too. Before Damien could respond, the medical suite door opened and Sophia emerged, her eyes red, but her expression determined. She held out the encrypted hard drive. He told me everything, she said, her voice steady despite the obvious emotional toll. About his work, about the trafficking ring, about why he left me. She looked between Elena and Damien. I want to help, however I can. These people, what they're doing, it's monstrous. If Luca's trying to stop them, I want to be part of that. Damien took the drive carefully. Sophia, you don't understand what you're asking. This isn't activism or charity work. This is dangerous. I'm a social worker. I've seen what trafficking does to people, to children. I've held kids who've been through hell and had to send them back into systems that failed them. Sophia's voice shook but didn't break. If there's a way to actually stop these people, to save even one person from that fate, I want to help. I need to help. Elena felt something shift in her chest, recognition of a kindred spirit. Sophia wasn't running. She was stepping forward, choosing to fight despite the cost. Luca won't want you involved, Damien said. Luca doesn't get to make that choice for me anymore. I love him, and I understand why he tried to protect me, but I'm not helpless, and I'm not ignorant. Sophia straightened her shoulders. Use me. My background, my access to social services, whatever helps. Just let me do something. Damien looked at Elena, clearly out of his depth. Elena stepped forward. What you're offering is brave, she said gently, but you need to understand the risks. The people Luca was investigating, they torture, they kill, they don't hesitate. If they find out you're helping us, you become a target. Then I'll be a target. Better that than being useless while people suffer. Sophia's eyes filled with tears again, but her voice remained strong. Please, let me help. Elena looked at Damien, saw him wrestling with the decision. Finally, he nodded. We'll find a way to use your expertise without putting you directly in the line of fire. But you follow security protocols exactly. You don't take risks. And if at any point we say you're out, you're out. No arguments. Agreed. Sophia took a shaky breath. Can I stay with Luca while he recovers? We'll set up a room for you, Damien said. But I need you to understand, once you're inside this world, even at the edges, leaving gets complicated. I've been half in this world since the moment I fell in love with Luca. I just didn't know it yet. Sophia managed a weak smile. At least now I know what I'm fighting for. She went back into the medical suite, back to Luca's side, leaving Elena and Damien alone in the hallway. That was unexpected, Damien said quietly. Love makes people brave. Elena watched through the window as Sophia took Luca's hand as the wounded man looked at her with an expression of pure gratitude. Or maybe it just reveals the bravery that was already there. Is that what's happening to you? Love revealing your bravery? Elena's breath caught. I never said anything about love. You didn't have to. I see it in the way you fight for Luca, the way you stood up to Victor. The way you're trying to protect Sophia. Damien's voice was soft. You care about us. Despite everything you know, despite the danger, despite your better judgment, you care. Caring about my patients is part of being a nurse. It doesn't mean… Elena. He said her name like a prayer. Stop hiding behind professionalism. I know what this is. I know what's building between us. And I know you feel it too. She did. She felt it in every conversation, every touch, every moment they spent together. Felt it growing despite her best efforts to maintain boundaries, to keep herself separate from this world. 5 days, she whispered. I have 5 days left on our contract. After that, you get to choose. Really choose, without debt or pressure or obligation. Damien stepped back, giving her space. I'm not going to manipulate you into staying, Elena. I'm not going to use what you feel against you. But I'm going to ask when the time comes. And I hope you'll at least consider saying yes. Before Elena could respond, Victor appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression urgent. We have a problem. The files Luca secured, someone's trying to decrypt them remotely. They know Sophia has them, and they're tracking the hard drive's signature. Damien's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the cold strategist. How long until they trace it here? Hours, maybe less. We need to move the data to a secure server and wipe the drive. Do it, and increase perimeter security. If they're tracking Sophia, they might try a direct assault to recover the evidence. Damien looked at Elena. Get Sophia and Luca to the secure wing, medical equipment and all. I want them somewhere that can be locked down completely. Elena didn't argue, didn't question. She simply moved, her training taking over. Within 20 minutes, they'd relocated Luca to a reinforced room in the basement level, medical equipment wheeled in and reconnected, Sophia helping despite her obvious fear. What's happening? Luca demanded, trying to sit up despite the pain. Sophia, you need to leave. If they're coming… I'm not leaving you, Sophia said firmly, pressing him back down. We've already had this argument, remember? You don't get to protect me by pushing me away anymore. Damien, Luca's eyes found his brother. She stays, Damien said. Victor's people will defend this location with their lives if necessary. No one's getting to either of you. You should evacuate the rest of the staff, the guards who aren't essential. If this turns into a firefight, already handled. Damien's phone buzzed with incoming updates. The civilians are being moved to safe houses. Core security team is staying. And Elena… I'm staying, Elena interrupted. Luca's my patient. I don't abandon my patients. This isn't a hospital, and these aren't normal circumstances. If shooting starts, then I'll do what I've been trained to do in active shooter situations. Stay low, treat injuries, keep people alive. Elena's voice was steel. I'm staying, Damien. Don't argue with me. For a moment, she thought he would order her removed anyway, but something in her expression must have convinced him because he nodded. Fine, but you stay in this room behind reinforced walls. If I give the order to evacuate, you go. No heroics. No heroics, Elena agreed, though they both knew she was lying. The next 2 hours were tense, waiting for an assault that might not come. Victor coordinated security from a tactical center, screens showing every angle of the estate's perimeter. Damien paced like a predator, phone constantly in hand, managing his empire while preparing for war. And Elena sat with Luca and Sophia, monitoring vitals and trying to project calm while her heart hammered against her ribs. I'm sorry, Luca said quietly, looking at Sophia, for all of this. You deserve better than a man who fights to save trafficking victims, than someone willing to risk everything to stop monsters. Sophia took his hand. I've seen the files, Luca. I know what you were trying to stop. That's not something to apologize for. But the danger is worth it. Some things are worth the risk. She looked at Elena. Right? Elena thought about her contract, about the 2 weeks that had turned into something far more complicated than medical care. Thought about Damien and the way he looked at her, about the world she'd glimpsed behind the violence and wealth. Some things are worth the risk, she agreed softly. Even when we know better, even when it scares us. Incoming vehicles, Victor's voice crackled over the intercom. 3 SUVs, heavily armed. They're not bothering with subtlety. Damien's expression went cold. Positions. Nobody fires until I give the order. Elena felt Sophia's hand grip hers, felt the younger woman's fear. But when she looked at Luca, she saw something else in his eyes. Trust. Trust that his brother would handle this. Trust that Elena would keep him alive through whatever came next. The trust was a weight and a gift in equal measure. The sound of gunfire erupted above them, muffled by layers of concrete and steel, but unmistakable. Sophia flinched, but Elena squeezed her hand. We're safe here. The walls are reinforced. The door's blast-proof. They'd need military-grade explosives to get through. And if they have them, then we adapt. Elena checked Luca's IV, making sure the lines were secure in case they needed to move quickly. But right now, we stay calm and let the security team do their job. More gunfire, shouting, the distinctive crack of something heavier than handguns. Then silence. Elena counted heartbeats, watching the door, waiting for it to burst open or for Victor's voice to announce casualties. Instead, Damien's voice came through the intercom, controlled and cold. Threat neutralized. 3 hostiles down, 2 captured for interrogation. No casualties on our side. The relief was dizzying. Elena sagged against the wall, her professional composure cracking. It's over? Sophia asked. For now. Luca's voice was grim. But they know where we are now. They'll come back with more people, better weapons. The door opened and Damien entered, a smear of blood on his shirt that Elena desperately hoped wasn't his. His eyes found hers immediately. You're okay? We're fine. You're bleeding. Not my blood. He dismissed it with a gesture. Victor's interrogating the survivors now. We should have answers soon about who's behind this. And then? Elena asked. And then we end this, permanently. Damien's voice was absolute. Nobody threatens my family and walks away. Looking at his face, at the cold fury there, Elena was reminded viscerally of exactly who Damien Vetrano was. Not the vulnerable man who'd confessed his feelings, not the worried brother keeping vigil, but the crime boss, the killer, the man who built an empire on violence and fear. This was the reality she'd been trying to avoid seeing, the truth beneath the attraction and the connection. Damien Vetrano was dangerous, and Elena was falling for him anyway. That realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt inevitable, like something that had been building since the moment she'd pressed her hands to his chest in that ER and refused to let him die. 5 days left on her contract. 5 days to decide if she was brave enough or foolish enough to choose this world, this man, this dangerous, complicated life. 5 days to figure out if love was worth the risk after all. The interrogation lasted 3 hours, and when Damien emerged from the basement level where Victor had set up his questioning room, his expression was carved from stone. Elena was waiting in his study, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. She'd left Luca in Sophia's care. The younger woman had proven surprisingly capable, following Elena's instructions precisely, her social work background giving her a steady hand with trauma. It was Marcus, Damien said without preamble, pouring himself a drink with hands that shook slightly. My head of operations, the man I've trusted for 15 years. He was feeding information to the trafficking ring, taking payments to look the other way while they moved people through our shipping routes. Elena's stomach twisted. The man who shot you? No. Marcus hired someone for that. Wanted distance from the actual violence. But when Luca started investigating, got too close to the truth, Marcus was the one who gave the order to take him. Damien's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that meant he was feeling too much. He tortured my brother to find out what evidence existed. Who else knew? And when Luca wouldn't break, Marcus decided to let him die slowly as a message. Where is Marcus now? In the wind. He ran the moment the assault failed tonight. Damien's knuckles were white around his glass. But we know where he'll go. He has a sister in Minneapolis, a daughter in Seattle. Victor's already tracking his financial movements. And when you find him? Damien's eyes met hers, and Elena saw the cold calculation there, the promise of violence. When I find him, I'm going to make him understand what it means to betray family, to hurt Luca, to bring this war to my doorstep. Elena should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual discussion of revenge, of murder dressed up as justice. But all she could think about was Luca's broken body on that table, the evidence of torture, the fact that this Marcus had ordered all of it. What about the trafficking ring? She asked instead. The people Marcus was protecting. That's more complicated. Damien set down his drink and pulled out a tablet, displaying a network diagram that looked like a spider's web. The evidence Luca gathered implicates dozens of people: politicians, judges, business owners, law enforcement. Some we suspected. Others, he shook his head. Others I've worked with for years. People I thought were legitimate. Can you take them down, legally? With what Luca found? Maybe. If we get it to the right people, if we can protect the witnesses long enough to testify, if we can navigate the political blowback. Damien's voice was tired. But the legal route is slow, uncertain, and in the meantime, they're still operating, still destroying lives. Elena heard the unspoken question in his words. You're thinking about handling it your way. My way is faster, more certain. These people, they've built systems specifically to avoid legal consequences. They own the prosecutors, the cops, the judges who would try them. Damien looked at her. But I don't own them, and I have resources they can't buy or threaten. You're talking about killing them. I'm talking about stopping them, permanently. The method is just logistics. He paused. I know what you're thinking, that I'm no better than they are, that violence makes me a monster, regardless of the cause. I'm thinking, Elena said carefully, that you're asking me to be okay with something I've spent my entire life opposing. I save lives, Damien. I don't take them. I know, and I'm not asking you to take them either. I'm asking if you can accept that I will. That this is who I am, someone who chooses effective action over moral purity. His voice softened. I'm asking if you can live with that. Elena stood and moved to the window, looking out over the dark grounds. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was running. Somewhere, the people he'd protected were still operating, still trafficking human beings, still destroying lives while hiding behind money and influence. She thought about the patients she'd treated in the ER, victims of violence, of systems that failed them, of a world that looked away from suffering because confronting it was too hard, too complicated, too messy. She thought about Luca, tortured for trying to stop these people, about Sophia's face when she'd said some things were worth the risk. I don't know if I can live with it, Elena said honestly. But I also don't know if I can live with myself if I walk away and do nothing. If I pretend I don't know what's happening just because getting my hands dirty would make me uncomfortable. You've already gotten your hands dirty. You operated on Luca, saved him, kept him alive. You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not. I saved a life. That's different from... Is it? Damien moved to stand beside her. You knew who we were. You knew what world you were entering. Every moment you've stayed, every time you've made a choice to help us instead of walking away, you've been making a decision about what kind of person you want to be. Elena's reflection in the window looked haunted. And what kind of person is that? Someone who fights. Someone who doesn't hide behind systems that don't work just to maintain moral superiority. Someone brave enough to do what's necessary even when it's not clean or simple or easy. Damien's hand found hers. Someone like me, but better. Because you still believe people can be saved, that the fight is worth it. I need that, Elena. I need you to remind me why any of this matters. Don't put that on me. I can't be your conscience. I'm not asking you to be my conscience. I'm asking you to be my partner, to bring your light into my darkness and help me figure out how to use what I am for something that actually matters. His grip tightened. Tomorrow, your 2 weeks are up. The contract ends. And you get to choose whether you walk away from this world or whether you stay and help me burn down the people who hurt Luca, who are still hurting others. Elena looked at their joined hands, at the way her fingers intertwined with his. If I stay, what exactly are you asking me to do? Keep doing what you've been doing, heal people, save lives, but do it here, with resources you'd never have access to otherwise. Help me build something better than what exists now. Damien turned her to face him. I'm not asking you to kill anyone, Elena. I'm asking you to help me save people while I handle the uglier work. I'm asking you to be the person who reminds me that destruction isn't the only answer, that building something good matters just as much as tearing down what's bad. That's a pretty rationalization for murder. Maybe, or maybe it's the truth that the world is complicated, and sometimes the only way to stop monsters is to be a bigger monster yourself. His voice was raw. I know what I am. I've made peace with that. The question is whether you can make peace with it too. Whether you can look at me, knowing everything I've done and everything I'm going to do, and still choose to stay. Elena pulled her hand free, needing space to think. You're asking me to compromise everything I believe in? No, I'm asking you to expand what you believe is possible. You believe in saving lives. Stay and save more lives than you ever could at Chicago Memorial. You believe in stopping suffering. Stay and help me dismantle a trafficking operation that destroys thousands of lives. You believe in making the world better. Stay and prove that someone like me can actually contribute something good instead of just more violence. And if I can't? If I try and fail? If I become someone I don't recognize? Then you leave. No punishment, no pursuit. The debt's already cleared. That was the original deal. Everything after is your choice. Damien's eyes held hers. But Elena, I think you're stronger than you know. I think you can do this without losing yourself. And I think deep down you want to. You want to stop hiding in the safe moral high ground and actually fight for what you believe in. He was right, and that terrified her. Elena had spent years telling herself she was fighting, working impossible shifts, treating patients the system forgot, doing her small part to push back against injustice. But it had all been within comfortable boundaries, within systems that allowed her to feel virtuous without ever truly risking anything. This was different. This was choosing to step into the darkness and hoping she could find her way back to the light. I need to think, she said finally. I need time to... The study door burst open. Sophia stood there, her face pale. It's Luca. He's crashing. Elena ran. By the time she reached the medical suite, Luca's vitals were plummeting. His breathing was rapid and shallow, his skin gray, his monitor screaming warnings. What happened? Elena demanded, pulling on gloves. He was fine, and then he started gasping, clutching his chest. Sophia's voice shook. I pressed the emergency button, but you were already running. Elena's hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking Luca's airway, his pulse, the surgical sites. He's bleeding internally. Something tore open, probably from the stress of the attack earlier, his body going into fight or flight mode. Can you fix it? Damien's voice was controlled, but Elena heard the terror underneath. I need to open him up again. Now. Elena was already prepping surgical equipment, her mind racing through procedures. Sophia, I need you to assist. Damien, unless you're scrubbed in and ready to help, get out. I'm not leaving. Then scrub in and follow my instructions exactly. I don't have time to argue. Elena's voice cracked like a whip. Your brother is dying. Either help me save him or get out of my way. Damien scrubbed in, his movements jerky with fear. Elena guided him through, setting up the surgical field, positioning lights, preparing instruments. Sophia stood ready with suction and supplies, her social worker training giving her steady hands despite her obvious fear. This is going to be rough, Elena warned. We don't have time for anesthesia to fully take effect. He's going to feel pain even unconscious. But if we don't find this bleed and stop it, he dies in the next 10 minutes. She made the first incision, extending her previous surgical work. Blood welled up immediately. Too much blood, the kind that spoke of arterial damage. Suction, Elena snapped. Sophia moved immediately, clearing Elena's field of vision. What do you need from me? Damien asked, his voice tight. Keep his airway clear. Watch his breathing. If it changes, if he starts choking, tell me immediately. Elena worked deeper, her hands moving with a confidence she didn't feel. And talk to him. Keep him fighting. Damien moved to his brother's head, his hand gentle on Luca's shoulder. Stay with me, little brother. You don't get to die after everything we've been through. You hear me? You stay. Elena found the source of the bleeding, a small tear in the repairs she'd made, probably from Luca's elevated heart rate during the attack. Under normal circumstances, this would require a full surgical team, specialized equipment, an operating room with backup systems. She had none of that. She had her hands, her training, and sheer desperate determination. I need absolute silence, she said. No talking, no movement unless I ask for it. This is delicate work. The next 20 minutes were the longest of Elena's life. Her world narrowed to the surgical field, to the careful work of repairing damage, of stitching together tissue that wanted to tear, of fighting against Luca's failing body to keep him alive. Damien stayed silent, his hand never leaving his brother's shoulder. Sophia anticipated every need, handing Elena instruments before she asked, adjusting lights, staying steady even as tears ran down her face. Finally, Elena stepped back. The bleeding stopped. Vitals are stabilizing. The monitors confirmed it, heart rate evening out, blood pressure climbing back toward normal, oxygen saturation improving. Damien sagged against the table, his control finally breaking. Will he? He's stable. But this was close, Damien, too close. Elena stripped off her bloody gloves. He can't take much more stress. His body needs time to heal, and every crisis sets him back. Then we make sure there are no more crises. Damien looked at his unconscious brother with an expression of such profound love and fear that Elena's chest ached. No more attacks, no more threats. I'm ending this tonight. Damien, you can't just watch me. He looked at Elena, and she saw absolute determination in his eyes. Marcus and everyone he worked with, they're done. I'm going to dismantle their entire operation, and I'm going to do it before sunrise. That's insane. You don't have the resources. I have exactly the resources I need. The evidence Luca gathered, my connections, and a very motivated incentive to make this happen quickly. Damien pulled out his phone. Victor, get everyone in the war room. We're moving on Marcus's network tonight. He strode out without another word, leaving Elena and Sophia alone with the unconscious Luca. He's going to get himself killed, Elena said quietly. Maybe. Sophia wiped her eyes, her hand finding Luca's. But he's going to stop the people who did this. That's what matters to him. And to you? Sophia was quiet for a moment. I spent years watching the system fail the people I was trying to help. Watching kids get sent back to abusive homes because we couldn't prove enough for court. Watching trafficking victims too scared to testify get deported back to the countries they fled from. Watching monsters walk free because they had better lawyers, more money, more influence. She looked at Elena. If Damien can actually stop these people, if he can save even one person from that fate, then yes, it matters to me too. Even if it's not clean, even if it's not legal. Elena understood. She'd felt the same frustration, the same helpless rage at systems that protected the wrong people, but understanding didn't make the choice easier. I'm going to check on Damien, she said. Call me if anything changes with Luca. Elena found the war room in controlled chaos. Victor had assembled a dozen men, all focused on screens showing surveillance footage, financial records, property ownership documents. Damien stood at the center, orchestrating everything with cold precision. Marcus withdrew $500,000 from his offshore accounts 3 hours ago. He's running, but he's leaving a trail. Victor pointed to a screen. His sister's house in Minneapolis, we have eyes on it. His daughter's apartment in Seattle, covered. Every property he owns or has access to, monitored. What about the trafficking ring leadership? Damien asked. We've identified 12 key players from Luca's evidence. Locations confirmed for 8 of them. Victor pulled up photos. The others have gone dark, probably got wind that something's coming. Then we focus on the 8 we can reach. Simultaneously, no warning, no time for them to coordinate. Damien's voice was ice. I want them neutralized by dawn, permanently. Elena's stomach twisted. Neutralized? You mean killed? Everyone turned to look at her. Damien's expression didn't change. I mean removed as threats. Whether that's through death, arrest, or complete financial and political ruin depends on the individual circumstances. That's still murder in some cases. That's justice in all cases. Damien moved to stand in front of her. These people, they're not going to stop because we ask nicely. They're not going to turn themselves in. The only way to end this is to make the cost of continuing higher than the profit of the operation. And your judge, jury, and executioner? I'm someone with the ability to act where the system won't. He gestured to the screens. Look at them, Elena. Really look. That man there, Judge Richard Castellan, he's been dismissing trafficking cases for 8 years. That woman, Senator Patricia Morris, she's blocked every piece of legislation that would strengthen protections for victims. That's Marcus's main contact in law enforcement, a captain who ensures investigations never go anywhere. Elena looked at the faces on the screens, at the casual evil of people who use their power to enable atrocity for profit. If I give this evidence to the FBI, to the media, what do you think happens? Damien asked. Maybe 1 or 2 get arrested. Maybe. But their lawyers will drag it out for years. Most will never see trial. None will actually face real consequences. And in the meantime, the operation continues under new management. So your solution is mass murder? My solution is targeted elimination of infrastructure. We take out the key players, seize their assets, expose their operations so completely that anyone who tries to rebuild knows they'll face the same fate. Damien's voice softened. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've never claimed to be. But I can be an effective one. I can stop this in a way the system can't or won't. Elena looked at the screens, at the evidence of systematic evil, and felt something crack inside her. All her life, she'd believed in working within systems and changing things through proper channels. But looking at these faces, knowing what they'd done, knowing they'd face no real justice through legal means, she couldn't deny the appeal of Damien's approach. How many of them will die? She asked quietly. As few as possible. The goal is disruption and dismantling, not a massacre. And Damien pulled up another screen showing organizational charts. We hit their financial networks first. Freeze assets, expose money laundering, that forces them into defensive positions. Then we release targeted information to law enforcement we know aren't compromised, give them cases so airtight even corrupt judges can't dismiss them. And for the ones who are too insulated, too protected by the system. He paused. Those are the ones where we use more direct methods. Direct methods meaning violence, meaning whatever's necessary to ensure they never hurt anyone again. Elena looked at Victor, at the assembled men, at the machinery of Damien's organization preparing to wage war on another criminal network. A month ago, she would have been horrified, would have called the police, refused to participate, done everything in her power to stop this. But a month ago, she hadn't operated on a torture victim at 3 a.m., hadn't seen the evidence of what these people did, hadn't fallen for a crime boss who was offering her the chance to actually make a difference instead of just treating the symptoms of systemic failure. If I stay, she heard herself say, if I choose to be part of this, I have conditions. Damien's expression didn't change, but she saw hope flicker in his eyes. Name them. No civilian casualties. If there's any risk to innocent people, the operation gets called off. Agreed. Any targets who surrender, who cooperate, who can be taken down legally, you pursue that option first before resorting to violence. Reasonable. And you don't lie to me about what you're doing. I don't need to know every detail, but I won't be kept in the dark about the uglier work. Elena moved closer. I'm choosing to trust you, Damien. Don't make me regret it. I won't. He reached for her hand. Does this mean you're staying after your contract ends? It means I'm staying tonight to see this through. Well, what happens after? We'll figure that out when we're not in the middle of a war. Elena squeezed his hand. Now tell me what you need from me. Go back to Luca. Keep him alive. That's the most important thing you can do. Damien's voice roughened. Everything I'm about to do, it's for him, to make sure the people who hurt him can never hurt anyone else again. But it only matters if he survives to see it. He'll survive. I'll make sure of it. Elena returned to the medical suite to find Luca awake, pale but conscious, with Sophia holding his hand. What's happening? He asked, his voice weak. I can hear there's a lot of movement upstairs. Your brother's going to war. Elena checked his vitals, relieved to see them holding steady. He's dismantling Marcus's network, all of it, tonight. Luca closed his eyes. He's going to get himself killed doing something stupid. Probably, Sophia agreed, but he's doing it for you, to protect you. I don't need protecting, I need... Luca coughed, wincing. I need him to be smart about this, strategic, not emotional. Can you tell him that? Elena asked. He won't listen to me, not about this. Luca looked at Elena. But he might listen to you. I doubt that. He trusts you, more than he's trusted anyone in years. If you tell him to be careful, to think instead of just react, he'll hear it. Luca's grip tightened on Sophia's hand. Please, Elena, keep my brother alive while he's trying to avenge me. Elena found Damien preparing to leave, strapping on body armor with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Luca's worried about you, she said from the doorway. Luca should worry about healing. He's worried you're going to do something reckless, that you're leading with emotion instead of strategy. Damien paused, his hand stilling on the armor straps. This is strategic. We've planned every move. But the motivation is emotional. You're doing this because Marcus hurt Luca, because you're angry. Elena moved closer. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do it smart. Don't take unnecessary risks because you're too furious to think clearly. I'm always thinking clearly. Liar. She reached up and cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. You're terrified. You almost lost Luca twice tonight. You're running on adrenaline and fear and guilt. That makes people make mistakes. Damien's jaw tightened. What do you want me to do? Let Marcus escape? Let these people continue operating? I want you to succeed, which means I need you alive and uninjured. Elena's voice softened. I just chose to stay, Damien. Don't make me regret it by getting yourself killed in the next few hours. Something in his expression cracked. You're staying, really staying. I'm staying, at least for now. At least to see if we can actually make this work, building something good in the middle of all this darkness. She smiled slightly, but I can't do that alone. I need you alive and whole and thinking clearly. Damien pulled her into a careful embrace, mindful of the body armor between them. I'll be careful. I promise. Good. Because Luca needs you. And she hesitated, then committed. And I need you too. He pulled back enough to look at her, and the emotion in his eyes was overwhelming. When this is over, when Marcus is handled and Luca's fully recovered, we're going to have a very long conversation about what we're building here. I look forward to it. Elena stepped away. Now go. Do what you need to do. I'll keep Luca alive. That's all I ask. The next 8 hours were the longest of Elena's life. She stayed with Luca and Sofia, monitoring his vitals, adjusting his medication, trying not to think about Damien out there orchestrating a coordinated assault on a criminal network. Reports filtered in through Victor, who remained at the estate coordinating from the war room. Asset seizures completed. 3 targets in custody, cooperating with authorities. 2 targets attempting to flee the country, intercepted. Financial networks dismantled, accounts frozen, and Marcus still running. They're closing in on him, Victor told Elena during one of his updates. He's in Milwaukee now, trying to cross into Canada, but we have people at every border crossing, every private airfield. He's running out of options. What happens when you catch him? Victor's expression was neutral. That's between him and Damien. Elena knew what that meant. Knew that when Damien found Marcus, the man who'd ordered Luca's torture, there would be no mercy, no legal proceedings. Just final, brutal justice. She should have felt something about that. Horror, disgust, moral outrage. Instead, she felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Maybe Damien was right. Maybe she had already changed, already become someone who could accept violence as a necessary tool rather than a moral failing. Dawn was breaking when Damien finally returned. Elena met him in the foyer, taking in his exhausted face, the blood on his clothes that she desperately hoped wasn't his. It's done, he said simply. The trafficking network is dismantled. 8 key players in custody or dead. The evidence has been delivered to federal prosecutors we trust. The children they were holding have been recovered and placed in protective custody. And Marcus? Damien's expression went flat. Marcus won't hurt anyone ever again. Elena nodded, accepting the implications. You're not injured? Bruised, tired, but intact. He looked at her. How's Luca? Stable? Sleeping? Sophia's with him. Elena reached for Damien's hand. You should rest. I need to debrief with Victor. Review. You need to rest. Elena's voice was firm. The crisis is over. Your brother's safe. The network is destroyed. Everything else can wait until you've slept. Damien looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. A few hours. Then I need to... A few hours is better than nothing. Elena led him upstairs to his room, helped him out of the blood-stained clothes and body armor. There were bruises blooming across his ribs, a cut on his shoulder that needed cleaning. She treated his wounds with gentle efficiency, falling into the familiar rhythm of medical care. When she was done, Damien caught her hand. Stay, he said quietly. Just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone right now. Elena settled beside him on the bed, her hand in his. I'm here. Within minutes, Damien's breathing evened out into sleep. Elena watched him, this dangerous man who'd just dismantled a criminal empire, who looked almost peaceful in unconsciousness. What had she gotten herself into? What kind of life was she choosing? But looking at Damien's face, thinking about Luca recovering downstairs, about the children who'd been rescued tonight, about the trafficking network that would never hurt anyone else, Elena couldn't regret her choice. This wasn't the life she'd planned. It wasn't safe, or simple, or morally uncomplicated. But it was real. It was making a difference, and it was hers. Elena closed her eyes and let herself rest beside Damien, letting the exhaustion of the past 2 weeks finally catch up with her. When she woke, afternoon sun was streaming through the windows. Damien was still asleep beside her, one arm draped across her waist. Elena lay still for a moment, processing the intimacy of it, the way it felt both foreign and right. Her phone buzzed with a text, from Sarah, her roommate, asking again if she was okay. Elena typed out a response. I'm good. Really good, actually. Some things changed while I was away. I'll explain when I see you. But would she see Sarah again? Would she go back to her old life at all, or was she fully committed to this new path? The answer came with surprising clarity. She'd go back to collect her things, to say proper goodbyes, to close out that chapter of her life. But she wouldn't stay there. Couldn't, now that she'd seen what was possible when you stepped outside the comfortable boundaries of conventional morality. Damien stirred, his eyes opening to find her watching him. Hi. Hi yourself, Elena smiled. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, but alive. He pulled her closer. You stayed. I said I would. I meant more than just last night. You stayed, period. You chose this world, this life, me. His voice was rough with emotion. Why? Elena thought about all the reasons. The debt payment, the resources she'd never have access to otherwise, the chance to actually make a difference instead of just treating symptoms. But beneath all of that was a simpler truth. Because I see who you are beneath the crime boss persona. I see someone who loves his brother enough to wage war for him. Someone who wants to use his power for something good, even if his methods are unconventional. Someone who makes me want to be braver than I thought I could be. She paused. And because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally fighting for something that matters instead of just surviving. That's a lot of pressure to put on a relationship that's barely 2 weeks old. Then it's a good thing we have time to figure it out. Elena kissed him gently. But I'm staying, Damien. Not because of the contract or the money or any obligation. I'm staying because I choose you. This messy, complicated, dangerous life we're building together. I choose all of it. Damien's kiss was deep and claiming, his hand tangling in her hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes held a promise. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice. Good. Because I'm going to hold you to that. Elena sat up, shifting back into professional mode. Now I need to check on Luca, and you need to eat something. No arguments. Yes, ma'am. They found Luca awake and arguing with Sophia about whether he was strong enough to sit up. Elena, tell her I'm fine, Luca said when they entered. You're absolutely not fine. You nearly died twice in the past 24 hours. Elena checked his vitals anyway, pleased to see continued improvement. But you're healing well. If this progress continues, you might actually survive being stubborn. It's genetic, Sophia said, glancing at Damien with a smile. Hey, I listen to medical advice, Damien protested. Only after Elena threatens you. Luca's voice was weak but teasing. I've never seen anyone manage you the way she does. That's because Elena doesn't fear me. I fear you plenty, Elena corrected. I just fear failing as a medical professional more. Luca's expression turned serious. Marcus? Dead, Damien said simply. The network's dismantled. The evidence is with federal prosecutors. It's over. The children they were holding? Safe. Being processed through proper channels now, with social workers who actually care. Damien looked at Sophia. I could use someone with your expertise to help coordinate their care. Make sure they end up somewhere good instead of just processed through the system. Sophia's eyes widened. Yes, absolutely, whatever you need. It might not be legal work, Damien warned. We're operating in gray areas, doing what needs to be done rather than what's officially sanctioned. I've been operating in gray areas my entire career, Sophia said. The only difference is now I might actually be able to help people instead of just documenting their suffering. Elena watched the four of them. Two brothers who'd survived impossible odds, a social worker choosing to fight outside the system, and herself, a nurse who'd traded her safe life for something dangerous and real. They were an unlikely team, bound together by trauma and choice and a shared determination to make something good out of darkness. So what happens now? Elena asked. After Luca recovers, after the trafficking prosecutions, after everything settles down, Damien pulled her close. Now we build something new. Luca and I have been operating in the shadows for years, making money but not really making a difference. That changes now. How? Luca asked. We start a foundation. Use our resources to actually help people, victims of trafficking, kids in the system, people the legal channels fail. We operate both inside and outside the law, doing whatever's necessary to create real change. Damien looked at Elena. With proper medical facilities so Elena can treat people who fall through the cracks of the healthcare system. And counseling services, Sophia added, her eyes bright. Real support, not just the bare minimum the state provides. It's ambitious, Luca said, and dangerous. We'd be making enemies. We already have enemies, Damien pointed out. Might as well make them for a good reason. Elena felt hope blooming in her chest, bright and unexpected. This was what she'd been searching for without knowing it, a way to use her skills that actually mattered, that saved lives in meaningful ways, instead of just patching people up to send them back into broken systems. I want to help fund it, she said. The money from our contract, I want to invest it in this foundation. Elena, that's your freedom, your medical school fund. Medical school can wait. This can't. She looked around at all of them. Besides, I'm learning more here than I ever would in a classroom, about medicine, about the world, about what it really takes to make a difference. You're sure? Damien asked. I'm sure. Elena smiled. We're building something good here, something that matters. I want to be part of that. Over the next few weeks, as Luca slowly recovered and the foundation began to take shape, Elena discovered a kind of purpose she'd never experienced before. She treated patients in a medical suite that rivaled any hospital's resources. She worked with Sophia to develop programs for trafficking survivors. She challenged Damien when his methods got too dark, reminded him that mercy could be strength, helped him navigate the balance between necessary force and unnecessary violence. And somewhere in the middle of it all, she fell completely in love. It happened gradually, in moments both ordinary and extraordinary. Damien bringing her coffee during long nights monitoring patients, the way he listened when she talked about her mother, her dreams, her fears, his vulnerability when he admitted his own demons, his own struggles with the darkness he carried. They fought sometimes, Elena pushing back when she thought he was being too ruthless, Damien arguing that she didn't understand the realities of his world. But they always came back together, always found their way to common ground. 3 months after her original 2-week contract ended, Elena stood in the Foundation's new medical facility, watching as they treated their first official patient, a young girl rescued from trafficking, terrified and hurt, but finally safe. Damien found her there, slipping his arms around her waist. Penny, for your thoughts. I'm thinking about how different my life is from what I planned. Elena leaned back against him. I was supposed to be paying off debt for the next decade, working myself to death at Chicago Memorial, maybe someday getting to medical school. Regrets? Not even one. She turned in his arms. This is better than anything I could have planned. Messier, more complicated, definitely more dangerous. But better. Even the parts where you have to date a reformed crime boss. Reformed is generous, but yes, even those parts. Elena kissed him. Especially those parts. I love you, Damien said, the words still new enough to make her heart skip. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated, but I love you too. Elena cut him off. And yes, it's fast and complicated and probably a little crazy, but it's also real. Maybe the most real thing I've ever felt. They stood there in the facility they'd built together, surrounded by the evidence of what they could accomplish when they stopped letting fear and convention dictate their choices. Elena had walked into Damien Vetrano's life as a nurse who'd saved him by accident. She'd stayed because of a contract, because of debt, because she'd had no better option. But she'd chosen to remain because she'd discovered something better than safety, better than conventional morality, better than the comfortable life she'd been building. She'd discovered purpose. She'd discovered love. She'd discovered that sometimes the only way to change the world was to step outside the rules that protected the powerful and fight for the people everyone else forgot. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but standing in Damien's arms, watching their foundation help someone who desperately needed it, Elena wouldn't have changed a single moment of the journey that brought her here. Sometimes the best choices were the dangerous ones. Sometimes love meant accepting darkness along with light. Sometimes healing meant getting your hands dirty. And sometimes the person who saved you was the one you'd saved first. "Ready to go home?" Damien asked. Elena smiled, thinking of the estate that had gone from prison to sanctuary, thinking of Luca fully recovered and working alongside them, of Sophia coordinating care for survivors, of all the good they were building together. "Yes," she said, "let's go home." And for the first time in her life, Elena truly understood what home meant. Not a place, but people. Not safety, but purpose. Not perfection, but honest, complicated, beautiful reality. She'd stepped into darkness to save a life, and somehow found herself in the light. That was enough. That was everything. That was home.